I'm Jeff Miller, 2049 Outfitters.
I'm Pam Hoffman, Everyday Spacer. At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. We're here on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 midnight Eastern Time, and 3 p.m. on Saturday in Queensland, Australia. We're broadcasting live from Akron, Ohio.
And Thousand Oaks, California. Thank you for joining us.
Just a quick note, I did find Space Dashboard, spacedashboard.com. And you may recall that Mark mentioned it last week. It's kind of cool because it feels like you're at the JPL Control Center.
Yep. Okay, tonight's guest is Andrew Titan Parris, and we'll be back in 8.3. Help excuse me. Help us welcome tonight's guest, Andrew Titan Parris. When he was 7 years old, he watched the Apollo Christmas Eve broadcast, the Apollo 8 Christmas Eve broadcast from around the moon on TV, black and white probably at that time. That singular moment opened his mind to the possibilities of what else might be out there. He wanted to see for himself. He became obsessed with space from that point on, and now he helps others to achieve the dreams of spaceflight, and also by mentoring and inspiring.
Andrew was a NASA TV contractor for 13 years. He's currently a decorated Space Center Houston volunteer, a founding member, and co-leader of the Inspired 24. That's theinspired24.com. He was recently selected as the Space Plus Starborn Council chairperson and a feature astronaut. He also has been a broadcast television engineer for 42 years and has won 3 technical Emmy Awards. What is the Space Plus Starborn Council, Andrew?
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Jeff. That's a great question. The Space Plus Starborn Council is a activities and support group, volunteer group within a Web3 organization called Space Plus. And they are the Web3 arm of Uplift Aerospace. And what that is, but is Uplift Aerospace started a Web3 organization to help promote space and Web3. And they, last April, selected 5 astronaut candidates and selected 1 person to go fly on a New Shepard rocket. And the winner of that group was, winner of that flight was Ruben Salinas, who happens to be an I-24 member. In fact, 4 of the 5 finalists were I-24 members also.
Cool. Yeah, I just joined, by the way, folks. All those who are out there listening.
And her call sign, you get a call sign when you join I-24. Mine is Titan, and Pam's is Apollo.
Yep.
And
so we get to...
Hey, Cliff. Thanks for joining us.
And he says Andrew must be the same age as him. So
okay, well, you got to guess how old I am. We'll play that game.
Yeah. Well, if he watched it at the same age you were, probably he knows what age you are.
Okay, we'll take guesses. People can write in their guesses, and I'll be honest about it, okay?
Yeah.
It's only orbits on any other planet. It'd be different.
Yeah, it's true. It's only times around the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Daniel,
all right, so
doing some math.
Wow, Daniel, you are good. You hit it right on the head. 61.
Yeah. He knows how to add.
Oh, that's right. You gave it away at the front end. Okay, well, winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have quite the illustrious, adventurous life here, Andrew. I can't wait to hear more.
Well, yes, I love my kids and my grandchildren. That's what you're talking about. Oh, you mean a space part. Okay, yeah.
Well, it's a space show.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently math is different in Australia.
Yeah. Well, you have to factor in the southern hemisphere or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Hi.
Dawn is here
Hi,
too.
Astra SG. Thank you for the
That's
welcome.
my friend Dawn Jenkins in Cleveland.
Daniel 61 too. Oh, I have a fellow 61er.
Yeah.
I'm just behind you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we were looking at what you created for, and I guess this has been a really good year because you said co-founder, co-leader Inspired 24. So an astronaut with Space for Humanity. That was a big year for you, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, it has been. It really has been. It's actually my return to space actually started last year. The Super Bowl ad for Inspiration 4 mission back in 2021 is what actually triggered it. I left NASA in the year 2000 and didn't know if I didn't really think about it. I had kids, graduating high school, braces, the whole 9 yards. And so that kind of went to the wayside, even though it had been a childhood dream. And working for NASA for 13 years, it was that really, I thought that's all I was going to get. But the Inspiration 4 changed everything. People hear that, you hear that in a headline, but the reality is it did change everything. It did change everything for myself and other people who are fans of space, who want to go to space. And that's what started up. It lit the fuse. And in fact, the Inspired 24, the group that I co-founded and co-lead, was a result of the Inspiration 4 mission. Basically, there were 24 of us at the Inspiration 4 launch in September of last year. And we joked it was the loser club. We didn't get picked, but we got invited to go. And so there was 24 of us there. And meeting everybody there was incredible with these people just like myself from different walks of life who had childhood dreams and so forth, whatever. And they were seeing seeing them relit, reignited. And I think there's a lot of energy with feeding off each other. And we're at that dinner and there were 24 of us, like I said. And there was one point, I love telling the story because it's prolific. It's just amazing. We're sitting there and it's an outdoor seafood restaurant out at the Cape. And for the guy from me cannot remember the name. I think it was the Bonefish, but I doubt it. That's what it was. Anyway, the music's playing and you're always having trouble talking to each other. And there was the music ended and it kind of dropped off. So there was all of us in silence and just out of nowhere. And I had no control over it. I just said out loud enough for everybody to hear me. Somebody from this table is going to fly in space. And there was a couple chuckles and there was a couple, kind of things like that. And within 6 months, Ruben Salinas got picked to fly on a Blue Origin flight. So there you go.
Very cool. We got a couple more comments. Let's. Thanks, Jeff.
I'm Australian and still waiting for a check from NASA, as the flat earthers say.
And David's here. Welcome, David.
Yeah, also from Australia. Good afternoon, Andrew. Our Aussie homegrown astronaut, of course, is Andy Thomas. Does NASA still take applicants from other countries?
I believe they will, but enough. First of all, I have to say I know Andy Thomas. I worked with him. Great guy. I actually was very fortunate in my time at NASA because I worked in the public affairs office TV area, so I was always interacting with astronauts, and so that's one of the greatest thrills of my life. I've got to tell you those stories for later. But yeah, NASA still does take you can send an application from anywhere. There's that now. They do the different members countries of the International Partnership for ISS and now for the Artemis Accords have their own. Like Europe has their own. I believe I don't know if the UK is under ESA at this point, and they may have separated off. But then you have the Canadians who have their own astronaut selection program. I don't know if Australia has one yet, but it's possible. But yeah, if you want it, doesn't matter where you live, send in your application. You never know what can happen.
Very cool.
And David says,
"Oh, hey, Scott.
Your chronology. Are you slated to ride Artemis?"
I say they've detected your chronology.
At
this point, no. I'm not sure, but no, I'm not. I'm not the Artemis generation, as we say. I volunteer over at Space Center Houston, and that's one of my biggest joys is volunteering and talking to people. I'm the Apollo era. I'm the Apollo generation. I grew up with Apollo. That's what fueled my dream. The young people today are considered the Artemis generation. They're the people. I see kids all the time and going, you guys are going to grow up and see us return to the moon. And a couple of years, we're going to see the first woman and the first person of color walking on the South Pole, and we're going to be habitating the moon. And basically, we're going to the moon to learn how to go to Mars. So we'll be testing a lot of technology and so forth. But I talk to kids all the time. 10, 11-year-old kids who talk, once in a while you run into one who's very serious about becoming an astronaut, not just the average every day. And it's amazing. I like to play a little game called Stump the Volunteer and have them ask me questions. And a couple times I have been, which is not that hard. But anyway, and I tell these kids, and even like teenagers and even to college, you guys are the guys, you're the age that's going to go to Mars. And not just...
And the
not
detail.
Just, yeah. And not just...
They just know details like crazy.
Yeah. They're not just the people that go to Mars, but see, in 10 years, we're not going to have the International Space Station anymore, but it's going to be replaced by multiple commercial space stations. And they're not going to be NASA will be sending astronauts there to do work, but companies will be hiring people to go work in there. And they're not necessarily going to be the astronaut that we think of. They're going to be engineers and scientists who are hired to do work, and they happen to go to work in space. So space will
we're
be
going to need everything.
go to work. Yeah, you're going to need everything.
I tell people all the time, we're going to need everything you can possibly think out there and more,
Plumbers,
because there's jobs that we'll need that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, doctors. I mean, you're talking about this is the seeds for the cities in the space. Okay, Orbital Reef and all the other other companies that are working on their designs. Those are the beginnings of our cities in space. And so there's going to be a whole new economy. That's kind of where the Web3 comes in, because when you go up in space, you can't pull out your credit card or give them some cash or something. You're going to have to be able to transfer any kind of financial transaction to the blockchain, and you can do that electronically. And anyway, so I love telling kids, you're the Artemis generation. You're the generation that's going to take us back there and fulfill the promise that was made to us during the Apollo days, and then we're let down. So,
yep. Okay, Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Would be my luck, they would give me a call, the call sign of Uranus.
I learned something. That means sky.
Yes.
That word means sky. So that'd be a good one, Scott.
Just in case anybody's scared to join I-24 because they're afraid of getting a weird or silly call sign, we don't do that. All of our call signs are very nice and not proper, but they're person appropriate. We try to, when we inquire about, when we question people about getting their call sign, we look for the positive things, their favorite books, movies, TV shows, characters, whatever. But we try to accentuate the positive. I'll give you an example. During the Artemis 1 first launch attempt, I was out there, and then there was a scrub. So I ended up at the space bar at the top of the Courtyard Hotel there at Titusville, which overlooks the water right across to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center. And then, of course, you can see all the launch pads. Great place to watch launch. If you're ever in Kennedy Space Center and you need a place to go watch a launch, and if it's not a major one, like if it's a Starlink or unmanned, you can go to that hotel and ride the elevator up and go to the space bar, have a drink, and watch a launch. It's really cool. Anyway, there were some young people there, and a couple of the I-24 members invited me to come over to watch the Starlink launch the next day. So we're sitting up there, and there was a young woman named Jasmine, and I got to talking to her, and she was like full of life, bubbly. She was a grad student, and she was getting ready to apply for graduate school, and she had just graduated to go into graduate school, and she wanted to be a planetary biologist, and she wanted to work on the Europa mission, because that's going to be our first attempt to look for life, not historic life or prehistoric life, but actual active life. And Europa is our best bet right now. And she talked so passionately about wanting to be part of that team. I said, well, first of all, do you want to join I-24? And she said, yeah. And says, well, as a co-founder and co-leader of I-24, I have it in my authority to make you a member here on the site. I, took the sword and made her a member. And then I said, I'm going to give you the call sign Europa. And she was just overjoyed. I mean, it was her key to success. And she is such a wonderful, wonderful addition to I-24. And the young, I mean, I'm 61, I got grandkids. I love the energy people bring to this organization. So
yes, it's wonderful seeing new, young, upcoming folks that are really getting excited about space. I'm really glad. And you're right, Inspiration 4 changed things. In fact, we did something last year for the first time, and we'll talk about that later, maybe. All right, so David.
Okay.
David says, demystify this for me. The statement on your page reads, to promote the democratization of space for all.
Okay.
Great question.
He's wondering what you mean by democratization.
It means everybody gets a fair shot at it. If you want to go to space, it's basically space for all. It's a big word. We spent a lot of time arguing about that But democratization is one of those keywords. It means just basically everybody, if you want to go to space, everybody gets a chance to do it. If you have a talent that can be utilized in space, I mean, we're not about free rides to go up and look out a window. When we want to send somebody to space or go experience the overview effect, we expect you to do the work. We'll talk about some things a little later about flight opportunities we like to talk about. But if you get a chance to go to space, you're not going up there. We would hope you wouldn't go up there and just kind of look out the window. You want to, especially if you do come back and talk about it. That's about the overview effect and so forth. But we're looking for people who want to do some work, who want to explore, want to learn things when you're up there. Who knows? We might have a member that ends up going up and inventing a new drug on the space station. Who knows? It's just the sky's the limit. Well, the sky's not the limit anymore.
Not anymore.
Yep. I was just thinking we need groups like Black Sabbath to go up there. And then you say and invent a new drug, and I'm thinking, well, that might be the group to do it.
Well,
too.
and you're absolutely correct. There's also a very large, very important part of this is not just sending scientists and engineers anymore. Those are important, but sending artists like Dear Moon. I mean, what MZ is doing, taking artists.
Most of them.
I was so overjoyed to hear Tim Dodd was going, because he's the guy who least expected to go. He's so unassuming. He's like, I'm just glad to be here kind of thing. And now he's going to the moon. And I'm like, you go, Tim. Yeah. I'm so proud of him. I've never met him personally. I've talked to him, in chats and things like that before. He spends a lot of time down in South Texas, which is where my wife's family from. And I try to get down there, but we've always missed each other. And I just want to grab him and hug him and say, I'm so proud of you.
Definitely an everyday spacer, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we got some more comments, right?
David says, Gerald O'Neill would be proud of your off-Earth ideologies. That's from a little bit ago, but yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Daniel, his call saying, well, that's his ham license. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. You just said KK6VDR, Go Ham Radio. I guess we'll segue quickly into something that, as an I-24 member, we talk about something, flight opportunities. There is a organization out of Tucson, Arizona called Worldview, and they are putting people in capsules and sending them up to 100,000 feet here in a couple of years. Back in April, I decided I wanted to do that, so I signed up. It's $500 to sign up to reserve a seat, and then it's $50,000 when you fly. Now, $50,000 is a lot of money, even for myself. But I have
it's not 125,000 though.
That's exactly right. It's more of the, as we joke, it's more of the beer and pretzel folk as opposed to the champagne and caviar folk. But if you got the money, be my guest. Anyway, long story short, I signed up. At this point, 20 other members of the Inspired 24 have joined up also. So this is something that we're big about. And one of the things is the flight is basic flight profile is their first location is going to be in Page, Arizona. So they'll be flying over the Grand Canyon, but they're going to have locations all over the world. Anyway, you'll launch in the balloon. It's a capsule for 10 people, two crew and 8 passengers, all with great views and wonderful seats and a bathroom, just so you know. It's a 12-hour flight, 10 to 12-hour flight. You launch from Page and take 1 to 2 hours to get up to 100,000 feet. And then you will, what they call loiter over northern Arizona, southern Utah area. And you'll be above, at 100,000 feet, you're above 99% of the atmosphere. And you'll see the curve of the Earth, and you may even see stars depending on what time of day you're up there. They won't fly
that's higher than that's higher than anything flies, right? Even the fighter pilots.
Only the I believe. Yeah, the fighter pilots don't get up that high. I believe there may have been some military aircraft that have flown at that altitude.
Oh,
maybe. I think maybe the U-2, did it get?
No, the SR-70 ones used to go essentially ballistic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so one of the things, speaking of ham radio, one of the things that I'm planning to do, because you're going to be up there for 6 to 8 hours, and you can only take so many pictures out the window, and so forth. And I'm a busybody, high energy kind of guy. So my great grandfather, Ellis Butcher in Hebron, Nebraska, was a ham radio operator in the early part of the 20th century. In fact, I can show you, if anybody knows about ham radio, you know about QSL cards.
Yep.
They're the blur is blurring that out, but
cool.
his call sign back then was W9DMY. At one point, the FCC changed the naming procedure and dropped the 9 and put a 0, so it was W0DMY. Anyway, so he's 4 of his grandsons all end up in television. Myself and my 3 other brothers, and my dad, of course. And so I decided one of the things I want to do when I go on the Worldview flight is I want to make contact with the International Space Station.
Nice.
And the ISS has a ham radio or amateur radio experiment, and they schedule stuff. And so I'm currently studying for my FCC license, FCC ham radio license, and I'm going to try to coordinate. I've already been talking to Worldview about them giving me either a penetration through the capsule for an antenna, or possibly putting in a radio outside and using Bluetooth, whatever. We're going to work that out. So my plan is and I'm also going to acquire my great grandfather's call sign is available. I can once I get my license, wow. I can get it and get to use his call sign again.
Nice.
With the 9 or the 0, Andrew?
The 0. The 9 was retired. I believe it was sometime around World War II they changed it, but it's W0DMY.
Got it.
And it's
still pretty cool.
It would be, yeah, very cool. I would, and that would, that's going to be 100. By the time I fly, it'll be nearly 100 years since he was. I want to say I haven't been able to nail down, but I believe he became a ham radio operator for Union Pacific in about 1916. There in Hebron. So, but
they probably know at least.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That I've just from family stories and I believe it was when he was a station master at Hebron, Nebraska. And
Daniel might have more information about that too, because he isn't. Yeah. I went for the test, but I didn't. They were closed for the holidays that year. So, all right. So we've seen some more.
Okay, so you were talking about the commercial space stations, and
yes,
Cliff's saying that they want to put a hotel in space so you can use your credit card one day.
Probably so. You probably pay before you go. But it's not just Hilton. Just about every major company that deals in things like hotels and hospitality and Disney are looking long term at facilities in orbit. And if anybody's going to do it, I would say Disney is probably going to be the first, just because they're an innovator and they think so far ahead. Yeah. And they got the deep pockets. Yeah, they could partner with an Axiom or Blue Origin or any of the other companies and develop that. The price tags are going to be pricey, but that's one of the things about technology. People, when they say, there's always been this discussion about the billionaire club. Billionaires are going to space and stuff like that. Well, if you look back at the first airplanes, the first trains, the first commercial ships, it was always
I wrote a whole paper about it 30 years ago.
There you go. Exactly. So this is part of the natural trend.
You can draw very specific parallels between the two. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's part of the natural. It's part of the natural curve, and people shouldn't worry about it. The more billionaires go to space, the sooner regular people can go to space.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I mean, who can buy a plane ticket right now? Practically anyone.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So Don says the Dear Moon winners were announced this week.
That's right.
Yes, they were.
That's right. I'm actually friends with a couple of people who didn't get selected. I was disappointed for some of them, but like I said, I was very happy for Tim. But it's a big, it's not just going to be Dear Moon. Now we have Titoff bought a flight also with his wife.
Yes, so right. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be picking a crew too. Be interesting which way
he went to Mir.
Yep. Yeah, he's Dennis. That's it, Dennis.
20 years. Yeah, Dennis. You're right. Yeah. I remember the flight. We were there at the airport when he came back.
Oh, cool.
That's damn near 20 years ago now, isn't it?
More than.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he flew on Mir and International Space ISS came online in 2000. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Daniel had
X-15 suborbital aircraft. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think he could get paying customers in that.
Yeah, no. No. And Cliff says, oh, yeah, talking about the balloon ride. Yeah, it won't be 11 minutes like Blue Origin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things that actually Ruben Salinas, who's going to be flying on New Shepard next year, he's also has signed up to fly on Worldview. And it's basically, in talking to him, it was one of those things where, well, it'd be great to cross the Kármán line and get the astronaut wings and get that experience of the 0G and so forth. But he knows to really, really take in the worldview, the overview effect. You have to spend time. You've got to You've got to soak yourself in. You've got to get your vision. You have to allow it to sink into you. I mean, I'm very. I've talked to people who are like, nah, it's just I can't afford it or something like that. I'm going, listen, this is a once in a lifetime. I mean, if you're 10 or 15 years younger, well, I'm talking to people in their 30s and 40s. If you're 10 or 15, yeah, you probably can just have a seat and wait for something else to come along. But if you're in 30s and 40s, getting in your 50s or even 60s like myself, this may be our last opportunity. I know it's my last opportunity, and that's why I decided. And it's not a contest that I got to do a video for or write an essay. It's something I can do to help. I mean, I basically sold most of my collectible stuff that I've collected over my lifetime, and to take care of some of it didn't come close to fulfilling it, but it took a big chunk out of it. So it shows that I can make progress and save up that money. And just so you know, if you're interested in Worldview, I put the web address in the chat there. They are going to offer financing. They haven't got any details on there still. This is very early on in the whole process. They're still doing hardware testing and test flights and so forth. First flight is supposed to be 2024, but everybody knows anything about aerospace. Nothing ever flies on time. Yeah. But that's okay. It's not going to fly on time. That's fine. It's part of
at least they're not pushing a deadline and pushing your bodies into a deadline,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But being how this is a passive zero pressure, ambient pressure balloon, there's very high safety factors.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Daniel says Nebraska is still one of the 8 states in the ITU region 0.
Yeah. That's I'm learning that from studying online. I love the online courses for the FCC amateur radio test. They're very specific. They basically tell you the answers. You just got to memorize them. But of course, I've been studying, and then I got off to work, and then I got to come back. So I basically have to start over again before I take the test.
Yeah, I should go do it finally. Because I have a 2-year degree in electronics, so a lot of that was pretty much. I remember. From training. Yeah. So you gave us a whole bunch of pictures and a video. Would it be a good time to delve into that?
Sure. Yeah. Let's roll into them. Go and pop up the first one. I think they're So people. One question I ask people when I talk to them: what is your first memory of when you first realized that there was space was out there? That space was a place you go. And this is my first memory. And this is, of course, what dated me. I watched the Christmas Eve broadcast from Apollo 8 around the moon, and when I was 7 years old. And that was the moment that I remember, hey, that's something. I mean, if you compare this to the pictures that we got back from Artemis 1, from the Orion capsule going around the moon, this is like dirty glasses in the dark kind of thing. But that's what we saw. That was the moon.
That was high tech back then.
Yeah, and if anybody old enough to remember who Walter Cronkite is, hearing his voice talk over this was historic. I miss Walter. Yep. I really miss Walter. Yep. But there are plenty of good space people now. Yep. But so this is my first memory. And so when I realized, that's when I started writing NASA and asking I would get press books and lithographs, auto pen lithographs of the astronaut signatures, which I wish I had not thrown away. So I became a teenager, and a lot of the stuff went to the wayside, but I still had an interest in it. I remember specifically the Apollo Soyuz flight in 1975. It was the summer, I believe I was 14 or 15. And I remember watching it. I was visiting grandparents in Utah. And I'm like, well, that was the end of the Apollo program. We didn't, and at that point, the shuttle was still iffy, whether it was going to get off on time, and it didn't, of course. But fast forward a few years, I was working in television. And then after I actually experienced the Challenger accident at Channel 20 here in Houston. I was watching it, and I had invited some, because it had Kristen McAuliffe, Teacher in Space, and then the Houston School District just embraced that flight. And so every school child in every school was watching the launch. So a lot of parents wanted to watch it too, but of course they were at work. So I brought a bunch of secretaries and other workers in to the control room at Channel 20, and I had tuned our dish to NASA TV, which I did a lot, and I was recording it too. I had a couple 1-inch tape machines recording it. And so I got a lot of people got to watch the launch. And there was another engineer there who had just come over from NASA. He had quit his job there and was working for us. So you had 2 people who were familiar with the space program. And of course the launch occurred, and then it broke up. And we both instantly looked at each other going, that's not right. There's something wrong. So we stopped one of the tape machines and rolled it back and looked at it frame by frame. And we talked about it later. We were probably the first human beings to see, to go back to analyze to see the breakup of that.
Oh my
And
word.
and at that point we had parents watching it, and then we realized, oh gosh, they don't know this is not right. So we had to explain to them what happened. Well, we didn't know what had happened. Obviously, we didn't know what the cause, but we said that's wrong. Something's wrong. The orbiter's not there. It's been at that point we thought it. At that point, we actually thought it was a self-destruct, because there is a self-destruct mechanism, and then you saw the two SRBs and they self-destructed. And it was very traumatic. It was one of those days that I look back on.
Yep.
That's the day that I think to myself, that's the day I became an adult. I mean, I was a young married man in 86. I had actually my son hadn't been born yet. My wife was pregnant at the time. But that's the day I became an adult about that kind of thing. And I started thinking about it. But anyway, a couple of years later, a year and a half later, when NASA was gearing back up to return to flight after the Challenger accident, that engineer that I've been working with told me, hey, they got openings out at the Dryden Flight Research Center at Edwards Air Force Base, and they're looking for TV people. And I had decided that I wanted to get into NASA. So I packed up the kids, kid. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and moved to California, up to the Antelope Valley, the high desert of California, which, everybody knows that back then it was still a desolate place. They always joke about the Antelope Valley Wind Festival, January 1st to December 31st every year, because it's always windy out there. And in fact, I remember my wife, we drove kind of some backward. Once we got through, we didn't go through LA. We went up through Santa Barbara, and then not Santa Barbara, San Bernardino, and then
Clarita?
up through up north. And we came in kind of from the above the mountains, went above the mountains and drove over. We had to drive through the desert, 2-lane road going to the humps, and we pulled through Palmdale. And my wife was driving the car with my son, and I was in the rental van carrying our furniture, but we had a CB radio, and we're driving along, and finally she sees a McDonald's, and she goes, "Oh, thank God, civilization." She thought I was moving them to the middle of nowhere. I think she'd seen the right stuff and thought that's where we're going to live. Yes, I did. I also cried that day. Yes, sir, I did.
Yes,
everybody did.
Well, I think no one left their TVs for a while there. Yeah. No.
In fact, I remember that day my dad called me, and he was apologetic. I'm so sorry about that, son. He told me the story about the day that Kennedy was shot. He was working at a TV station, and the KMTV in Omaha, I believe it was. And he was on duty. He was the master control operator. So he was the guy in charge of, they had a monitor that was the network feed, and it would pop up emergency news flash, and he had to cut into it. And he was there when Walter Cronkite gave his announcement. Yeah. So it's kind of that same thing, experiencing that history live kind of thing. So yes, it was very moving, very moving. So anyway, so I moved the family to Antelope Valley and went to go work at Dryden. You can put up the next picture, I believe is.
Okay. Oh, before we do that, I have a couple more
from
a little while ago, but we were busy
joking around.
Just curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you see any private enterprise eventually taking over U.S. space flight that has NASA exhaust, or as that is?
I get his question. Yes and no. Part of the mechanism for NASA is they're chartered to do the exploration, and what they're supposed to do is do the leading edge technology exploration, and then once it becomes commonplace, hand it off to commercial space. And we're seeing that now with the commercial cargo and commercial crew. And that's the way it works. NASA has a limited budget. They can only do one big thing at a time. And so, and they try to do space shuttle and space station, and then that budgets have always been an issue. NASA's budget now is minuscule compared to what it was during the Apollo days. Back then, I believe it was 2 or 3% of the GDP or national, the budget. Now it's like half
2 or 3%.
Wow.
2 or 3%.
And the perception, because I used to volunteer at NASA. It used to be called NASA Lewis, is now NASA Glenn. The perception was that NASA got 20% of the countries.
Never.
No, but they did tremendous things with.
Yeah. Well, even when they get, but yeah, they do. So NASA has a limited budget. And so what's happening, you'll be seeing that now. We're going to the moon, to learn how to go to Mars. But once the moon travel becomes commonplace, you'll see NASA start handing off the work that they want to do in the lunar Earth area to commercial people. Most likely it's going to be Starship. I mean, what else is there out there, but who knows? And then NASA will take what money they have, join up with their international partners, and we'll go to Mars. And that's how it is. And that's the natural flow. And it's not that NASA will ever stop going to space. NASA is directed to, it's in their charter. They're about exploration. But the commercial side, and that's one of the things during the shuttle program that came become kind of blurred because we were launching satellites, commercial satellites out of the shuttle. And everybody was happy with it because that's what everybody was putting their money in the shuttle basket. Well, then we had the Challenger accident. Everybody's like, whoa. And that's where the walk back to expendable launch vehicles and so forth occurred. And it's always about a balancing act. You never want to have, like, we need 2 commercial capsules to get our people in and out of orbit. And that's why Starliner is so important. We must have that. And I know some people badmouth Boeing for the problems, but you know what? Ultimately, they have to fly. We need them.
I hate to disagree with you, but not everyone was happy that that the shuttle was launching those satellites.
You know what I mean.
Launch business.
Hindsight is 2020. Okay. And then the Challenger action made them NASA really look, and Congress required it, and it was part of the report, was that to look at their what is NASA supposed to be doing up there, and that was the exploration, not the commercial side.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And going back a little bit too, also inspirations. I think this is when you were talking about signing up for the balloon flights, because
I love this though.
My first
Sputnik.
memory
was
seeing Sputnik.
Not Sputnik per se, but it was the rocket booster, because Sputnik was very small.
Yeah.
But
wow. 75. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Dave's been in the business a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of birthdays, today is my father's birthday. He's 89. Happy birthday, Dad.
Wow. Happy birthday, Dave, too.
Yeah.
All right, and we got Dawn's got a
cool.
A call sign. Yep.
Yep.
General license, and just renewed 10-year license for the second time. Cool.
KC8SQN. I like that.
Yep. And let's see, Cliff / Kennedy shot. Got to stand on the spot in Dallas, and well, okay, this will tell you exactly how old I am. I almost wasn't born because Kennedy was shot.
Oh, really?
My mom was so upset. Yeah. So that's how old I am.
Yeah.
So you want to go to the next picture?
Well, I've just figured I'd go through the bunch of. We still have a few of.
Okay, we'll get caught up in that. That's fine.
Yeah.
I had to scroll. I didn't see him.
Next big space station is Gateway. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Bashir. Hey Pam, how are you?
Bashir, hi. Welcome. How you doing?
Yeah. No, Bashir. Her name really is Pam.
You guys have too much fun doing this. You know that, right?
Well, you see, I as a professional.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. So
there I am.
Got another one.
So I have no way to explain how a 12-year-old got on the space shuttle program right there. But that's me, and in my late 30s or something like that. That's just a picture of me out there on the lake bed. So one of the things when I was at Dryden doing landing coverage, I was part of the convoy, the vehicle convoy that used to go out, and we had a single camera microwave truck, and we would go out and set up and post. We would stay with the convoy. So as soon as the shuttle stopped moving, the convoy would move up, and of course they'd put the stairs up and the astronaut would come down. But that's when the astronauts left. That's when the television coverage stopped. Public didn't see anymore. But we were there many more hours, up to 6 to 8 hours afterwards, because the television, believe it or not, in NASA is, and it still may be true, I don't know this, but back then shuttle paid for the television, and that was because it was an engineering tool for the program. PAO just happened to piggyback on it. So once the PAO part was over, we would go and take our camera, put it on a tripod, and we would go under the orbiter. And there was a tile survey crew, and there was a tile and tire. So we would have, instead of flying everybody from Kennedy and Houston out there, they would utilize our camera using a microwave link back to Dryden's TV control room, and then they put it up on the
Wow.
satellite, and it come down in Houston and in Kennedy Space Center, and that way the people on the other ends could view, like if there was a tile damage, the tile guy would say, "Come take some pictures." So the camera guy would go up and set up, and they'd look at it. And of course, every tile in the shuttle was unique. So if you had a lot of tile damage, you'd have to print new tiles. And so they needed as much lead time as possible. And the shuttle would be there for up to 2 weeks before it was flown back. Part of the post-processing, if you had payloads, you got to come out or whatever. So they needed that lead time. So that's why the television was so important. And we do tire survey, if a tire was damaged, they want to see that kind of stuff. But tile survey, TILE, was what we spent most of our time doing under the orbiter.
Yeah, because there were so many of them.
And interestingly enough, and I can tell this story now because I think it's been more than 20 years and the federal government can't prosecute me for anything. But at the end of those long days of being there, the crews that were doing closeout inside the orbiter would they'd be just waiting for the tow crew to show up or whatever. And so once in a while, they would grab us and let us go inside the orbiter into the mid deck and then up in the flight deck. And I got to do that on Columbia and Atlantis. And something that does not translate in television because they use a lot of wide angle lenses. It is tiny in there, tiny. It's amazing. I mean, you can go to the mock-ups and things like that, like the one at Johnson Space Center at Space Center Houston. And even it's a little larger because they got to put people through there and there's fire issues and stuff. It was tiny, and something that nobody really thinks about, and I'm not going to dispel the rumor anymore, it smelled bad in there.
Yeah,
it was like
I've
locker
heard about
room.
that.
And it's in its basic biology, I guess you call it, is when you get 7 people in a confined space with a closed loop air conditioning system for 2 weeks, it's gonna smell bad. And that's the one thing that always
apparently.
Yeah, well, the Mir station, I've talked to several astronauts who were on the space station, Shannon Lucid, Jerry Lineker, Andy Thomas. And the Mir space station was way worse than the International. In fact, they took that very seriously, and they've done a lot of risk mitigation with everything that can make a smell. I mean, the water recycling system on the International Space Station, which is up to about 93%, is very good about keeping the moisture out of the air and so forth. So it's not as bad, but you become nose blind once you're up there. So, and I'd be interested to talk to some of the 3 gentlemen who flew on Axiom 1 with Mike L.A. and see what they thought of it.
Okay, yeah, we've got a bunch more comments, so let's
take
a look. Daniel said Sputnik overflights was visible from Earth, actually. Wow. Okay. Yeah, depending on the light, it would have to be the lighting conditions. You'd have to be at dawn or dusk kind of thing. Same thing when you're watching a SpaceX launch now. Yeah. David says, great chat. If I grew up in America, a little late than I did, I would probably be Andrew right now. Yeah, because David's done a lot of stuff too in Australia. Yeah,
cool. Well, there's a lot of Andrews out there, and I'm always interested in talking to them too.
Yeah, and let's see, Cliff. It was darker.
It was darker back then at night. Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually true. Very true.
And David, by the way, nobody ever saw. Oh, okay. So now Daniel and David are having an argument.
Yeah. Well, he's technically correct. They didn't. Once the upper stage, I guess technically it's the core stage, they didn't do anything to it. It barely had enough energy. So yeah, you probably would have seen the core, which would have been in an approximately the same position for a while anyway.
Right. Yeah. It's not like they were separating fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Rocket Future. That's another. I know who Rocket Future is. That is
good.
Andrew Clifford, another I-24 member, call sign Lambda.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah. Hi, Lambda. Welcome.
Hi, Lambda.
Glad you're here.
Sorry to appear negative, but instead of the shuttle program, expensive time waster, the U.S. should have gone directly back to the moon, established themselves, and carried out the experiments there. Preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, you can't. I'm not going to argue with there. History is what it is. Although if you watch the Apple Plus show, for all mankind. Sorry, you get to see what it could have been. And like I said, as a junior historian, I can't argue with that. I believe if I had a time machine, I'd go back and tell Johnson and Nixon, don't cancel it. We should have continued. I mean, we literally threw away 3 full Saturn V boosters. I don't mean throw away, but they're all in
and
museums
lawn
now.
ornaments now.
Yeah, well, very historically accurate lawn ornaments.
Yes.
But hindsight is 2020, you know. So
Jerry Purnell used to rail about going to Kennedy and just pointing at that thing, sitting on its side, going that could have been up there.
Correct, and he's correct. He's absolutely correct. But I'm of the opinion that you learn from your mistakes and move on. And fortunately, we have learned from mistakes. Bringing the shuttle program to a close was the best option at the time, and now we're full flown back into not I want to say expendable, but capsules because we have reusable everything. We're trying to get there, and it's the way to go. Now there are still other countries working on lifting body designs, and they do have their place. The XB-37, the X-37B, excuse me, is a perfect example of that. That thing is, I just came home, 900 days? And it's amazing the technology to do it. So there are places for looking at. Sierra Nevada's Dream Chaser is going to be flying cargo to the International Space Station. I'm really forward to seeing something fly and land. Originally, when they announced that, they were threw a lot of seed money at Ellington Field over here, and they were going to actually plans to land Dream Chaser here at Ellington, and I'm on the approach path. I hear planes all the time, and I would have loved to hear that double atomic boom coming down, but then they decided it's probably not good to be flying those things over inhabited areas and might, problematic. So they're going to land it at Kennedy.
With Windows, and Rocket Future sure are. Don't know what he was responding to, but
I saw one from Daniel. Did you get that one? The third stage booster?
Oh. No, I missed that one.
Third stage.
I think that's a Sputnik. Thing. So.
Yeah. And then Dawn, I think amateur radio operators were tracking Sputnik.
Yes, actually, that's an interesting story.
Sputnik?
That's actually Sputnik. Same. It was the potato they left up there. That's actually how a lot of the world found out about it, because there were amateur radio operators in Europe and the UK listening on the frequencies, and that's when they heard. That's a lot of that information about the Soviet space program came out that way, and so that was where a lot of the early information about those kind of things and tracking them. And Sputnik just had a beep beep beep, so it was very easy to track, and you could use simple triangulation, power meters, things like that. You could find,
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they specifically put that
probably Doppler effect.
So other people would know that they were up there.
Yeah, actually, no, that's how they're planning. Hello, thank you. Okay. Hello, thank you. Hello.
David spent a whole day with Buzz Aldrin at his California home in 2008 at the family invitation, and he's of the same opinion about the shuttle program. So
yeah, Buzz has never been shy about giving his opinion. When I was there at the Johnson Space Center doing PAO television, he used to come in because it is as a former astronaut, there's certain things they give you a little privilege to do, and he used to come use our press room to do press events. If he couldn't, astronauts, whether you're a former astronaut or you're a current astronaut, sometimes you get asked to go do things and you just can't get there, but you don't always say no to people. So if it's an interview or something like that, NASA would allow astronauts, former astronauts, come in and use our television facility to do satellite. We'd use the NASA TV satellite and so forth like that. And Buzz used to come in and use that a lot. And Buzz is a very driven man. I never actually got to talk to him. Basically, we would set up, he would come in, sit down, do his thing, and then leave because he was very busy. And he didn't really have an entourage. I think he had a couple people with him. But yeah, Buzz has never been shy about his opinion, and he's right about some things.
Okay, so Daniel says December 7th, 2022 was the 50th anniversary of the last humans on the moon.
That's right.
Saw a lot of that on Facebook.
Space Center Houston had a whole celebration about it, and we were telling people about it, giving perspective. It's been 50 years since we left the moon now, and here we are going back. So at least we made that progress. We wish it had been earlier, but you take the hand you were dealt and you move forward. And I have to say something that I want to say I was a Boeing basher, but I was not happy with things the way they were going with Artemis. I'm from the contracting world. I know how it works, and Boeing can do better. Boeing is historically what I consider the gold standard for aircraft and spacecraft engineering.
I was on a Delta II program for a while.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And the Boeing we have today is not the Boeing we used to have. And I hope Boeing gets back to be the preeminent aerospace company. But it takes people to do their jobs and get us flying. We need Starliner up there as soon as possible.
Yeah. We need as much stuff as possible up there. Okay, Rocket Future said that his sure was comment was a response to a lot of Andrews.
That's correct. Yeah. In fact, Lambda has his own web streaming Rocket Future, and we've done some live streams for it. But we just did the Artemis 1 landing, and so it's basically the Andrews show. That's why we use our call sign. So we're like, Andrew, back to you, Andrew. Okay, Andrew, back to you, kind of thing.
Okay, and
all right, we got a couple more still, right?
The Russians put out the signal, deliberately, so all radio sets in the world would hear it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Best propaganda for that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
well, they had a lot of firsts. The Russians absolutely had a lot of firsts.
That's right. And if you go back and read through the history, the U.S. actually had opportunities to beat the Russians, but were told not to because there was a fear about what that would cause, what kind of panic and so forth like that, which I think is, I always think people overthink that kind of stuff. Like when talk about, when we discover there's aliens, I mean, come on, we've had it in our stories. People have been talking about intelligent life. It's no big deal. We find if a spaceship landed today, you'd be like, wow, what got you here? I mean, you guys, there's not a mystery anymore. Travel through space is kind of commonplace for us. They just would happen to have been doing it faster. I am of the opinion there is life out there. Now, whether it's little green men or microbes, it seems more likely than not. In fact, I don't want to live in a universe where we're the only life. And I don't mean that as a hit against mankind or humankind and so forth. But I just don't think people don't understand how big the universe is.
It's big.
Space is the big isn't the big enough word. You've got to come up with like gargantuan, and even that doesn't come. There's got to be
quote.
Life out there.
Space is big.
But I'm not only am I a firm believer that there is life, and I believe there's intelligent life out there, but I'm also a believer in the physics as we understand it in the universe, and that means you cannot travel faster than the speed of light. I hope somebody figures it out, and I hope other people do. But right now, we have to deal with the reality that travel beyond the speed of light is not possible. So that while there may be other life out there, we're going to be alone for a while. So we need to start concerning ourselves about getting through and getting out there and start the exploration so we can start reaching out.
Yep. And Daniel says,
that must be Sputnik.
Yeah.
Its batteries didn't last all that long.
Yeah. It wasn't really meant to. It was just meant to get up there.
Yeah. As many Soviet space first where they were completely about propaganda.
Yeah. Okay. Dave met Gene Cernan here in
Australia.
Yeah, Gene, great guy.
Yep. AC. Hi, hey AC. I'm sorry to say sophistication of tracking in 1957 by hams at the shortwave frequencies used was not really feasible, so just receiving the signal was enough to verify it was in orbit.
Yeah.
Some of them had some good maths. They could figure it out.
Well, yeah.
Using Doppler, you could, if you're coordinated, that's the whole thing. It's about coordination.
Yeah. And Cliff.
I don't think the hams are. Hey, it's Saturday afternoon there. We get it.
Yeah. Is this are these guys you hire to bring them in and feed you jokes? Is that the deal?
Oh, no.
They're great.
No,
this is
we just
great.
helped them out. Now they're big fans.
Yeah.
They're just good guys from Australia.
Whatever you're paying them, you're not paying them enough.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
all right, let's get to some more pictures.
All right. So anyway, so we in 1990, I left a contractor I was working for lost the contract at Dryden. And so, but they picked up the contract in Houston, Texas at the Johnson Space Center. And one of the things when I got there was I got to go fly 0G. Our contract was required to provide video support, so they would train us to fly. And you could see me just barely fitting on my blue flight suit back then. I flew for about 2 years, on 1995 and 96, flew 12 flights at about 60 per abs per flight. Wow. That's the average number. Unfortunately, when I stopped flying there, it wasn't like I just stopped flying. I just wasn't called up, and eventually my locker was cleaned out. And I had my blue flight suit and my flight books, but my logbook was left in my locker, so I didn't get my logbook, so I can't give any specific numbers about that. But what's the next picture? I forget what the next picture is. Oh, okay. One of the other things I got to do was, once again, as our contract was required to provide video support, you can see the yellow, we call those float cameras. The guy you're seeing there on the left of the screen, his name is Charlie Gaver. He was another 0G guy I flew with. And then on the far right, there's another figure with a camera facing forward. That's Marta Durham. They were two of the other divers. And then you can see me. I've got the third camera. And this is actually a picture taken at the end of a real-time EVA tryout. So on STS, I believe it was 49, their mission was to go capture a satellite that had been launched from the shuttle. The PAM, the payload assist motor, had failed. And so it didn't put it into proper orbit. So it was floating around there in a useless orbit. So the shuttle went up as one of its first things it was going to do was to go out and capture the satellite. But they had developed a fixture that they would use the arm to go or I forget if it was, I believe it was two astronauts were going on an EVA, and there was essentially a catch bar they were going to shove up into the bottom of it, and these springs would fling out, and they would grab a hold of it, and they would have a remote manipulator grapple fixture, and they could grab on, and they could put the satellite down, and they were going to install a new PAM motor, hook it up, and fire it out. Best laid plans. Unfortunately, because of the mass and lack of gravity, whenever the astronaut tried to apply the capture bar, it would just push the satellite away. So they came up with a plan, which was to send, because they actually do carry 3 spacesuits, always carry a backup. They would put a third astronaut in, and they would go out, and because that mission was also a technology demonstrator for how to build a space station. At that point, they were still thinking about using this individual pole. So they had some essentially I don't know, not Lincoln. What was the metal? So not Lego, but the metal.
Zactos or Zactos sets. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
the metal construction sets.
Yeah, they had pipes and stuff that they could use. So they set up a triangle, and they put the 3 astronauts on foot restraints standing there, and they just allowed they flew the orbit up and had them grab it. So the 3 astronauts just had enough strength of the 3 of them grabbed it, and then 2 of them held it while the third astronaut took the grapple fixture and put it in, and that's how they did it. Well, anyway, back to the pool. That was something they came up on the last minute, but they don't do that without testing. So we had to go do about an 8 or 10 hour pool wet F training runs where they put 3 astronauts there, and they literally were trying things out, and then they would call up and say, yeah, this works or this doesn't work. So we had this long multi-hour marathon of a test spacewalk happening at real time while they're on orbit. And so this was the end picture. We got all done, and that's me in the middle with the camera. And that's the only known picture of me in that water at the wet F.
Yeah, Scott got it right. It's a Rector set, but we got a bunch of comments before.
Rector set, that's it. Yeah, that was like a Rector set, but
Scott wrote in the comments. I can see it, but we haven't flashed it yet because there's several more in front of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me get Dawn. Speed of light is a definite limit. Yeah, to me, it's not just the billions of galaxies out there for life. DNA is made of the most common elements in the universe. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. And no, it's their fault, our fault. Yeah.
They're stuck with us.
Well, it's true. Wow. They were coming here for the total solar eclipse. Their first stop in LAX. Their contact fell through. Wrote to me through my meetup, said, we could use some help. And I said, yes. So we took them around for 3 days in LA.
Cool.
It was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
They're talking about wormholes and black holes for FTL travel.
Yeah.
Here's 2 things that make that not so good, although still possible theoretically. you would have to get one end of the wormhole to wherever it goes. So that'd have to travel at sublight speeds to get there, theoretically, but then you could do it. The other trouble is that the gravity gradients around the edges of it are so bad that it'd shred you as you went through it, unless it was massive and you were just in like the sweet spot in the center.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of videos out there now that talk about the practicalities of when you get close to a wormhole, what happens, and the theories about that stuff, Hawking radiation, the whole 9 yards. Wormholes, of course, are still theoretical, so it's hard to things. Popular science fiction, of course, puts wormholes as this magic device that lets you go anywhere, and it'd be good if you can control the other end. But who knows? There's a great episode on Star Trek: Next Generation where the Federation and I think the Ferengi were working to bid on rights for a wormhole in it, and they talk about the practicality of a wormhole, but when you can't control the other end, you don't know what's going to happen. So it's for an unfortunate Ferengi crew, they ended up stranded in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. Yeah, that's where
Erector set. There we go.
Yep.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep. And AC, today's frequencies that UHF and VHF allow for compact enough beam antennas to allow for satellite tracking. And I regularly do that, as well as many private stations working for the
SatNogs, yeah.
SatNogs.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm counting on that when I get up on Worldview, compact radio.
So is AC a ham? That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cliff, I want to be me here.
Okay, good.
And
Meccano. That's right. In England, it was Meccano because I know that from the James May Toy Story series. I love James May. I wish I could meet him.
I've never heard of James May.
Yeah, he was part of the Top Gear group, and now he's part of the show on Amazon, the Grand Tour. And it's basically three guys doing car stuff. Yeah.
And Daniel says if you make a warp bubble, you can ignore the speed of light. Maybe.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Of course, one of the things that it requires is negative mass. So we've still got some things to figure out to make that work.
Hey, they ignited cold fusion they ignited? They had the other day?
Oh, no, regular fusion. Regular hot fusion.
Assuming it's true.
Okay. But they've proven now.
Assuming it's true.
Yeah. And
they have to repeat it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but break even has been their goal for a long time.
Yeah.
Get as much energy out as you put in.
Yeah. Well, it's incremental.
Yep. Yeah.
Spaghettification.
Yep.
That's the word I tried to use one time and could not remember how to pronounce it. Spaghettification.
Yeah. And Albert Curry Drive. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of theoretical. And rocket
spelling. I can't even pronounce it. Spelling it is not even an attempt at that point. Me in the pool. Oh, okay.
He says, I want to be the me.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that was the wet F, and that pool doesn't exist anymore. When they built the NBL, late 90s, I believe it was, they reused in fact, the NBL is built inside the facility that was originally going to be building the modules for the predecessor to the International Space Station. Was called Space Station Freedom. But when that project was canceled, the building sat empty. And then when they decided they needed to have a bigger pool when the space station was coming online, that's when they took over that thing and put the pool in and so forth. And it's called the Sonny Carter Training Facility, named after astronaut Sonny Carter, who was killed doing some stunt flying back in the 90s.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and AC says, fusion for 0.5 nanoseconds. Well, but at least it broke even.
Yeah, so exactly. It's a start. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Keep going, guys. Call back when you get a little more.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for the shout out.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Yeah. David, when considering the possibility and impossibility of future space travel via wormholes, etc., consider the words of the great mathematician René Descartes. Descartes. Yeah. I'm not French.
There it is.
In order to reach the truth, it is necessary once in a while to put everything in doubt as far as possible.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think you got a few more pictures, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I. Okay. So, fast forward. I'm spending my time at the Johnson Space Center. I got to do a lot of traveling for NASA. I got to travel to Russia 3 times to document International Space Station construction.
Oh, cool.
And one of those trips also included a trip to the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where the
Nice.
Russians launch everything. And this was the launch of the first space station crew, Expedition 1. Bill Shepard, Sergei Krikalev, and I forget the third cosmonaut's name. I'm so sorry, sir. But those are 2 other members of television contracts. The gentleman, I'm on the left. I'm still 12 years old. I don't know how that happened. The guy in the center is Walt Lindblom, who's still at the Marshall Space Flight Center, and the gentleman on the right is Glenn Benson, who's still at the Kennedy Space Center. And those cameras we're holding are 2 prototype high definition cameras from the Panasonic Corporation. We took over there to shoot the launch in. We got to document quite a bit of the crew activities and so forth. Got some great stories. And as a junior space historian, go to the Baikonur Cosmodrome. And remember, this is 2000, so there still hadn't been a lot of people. Wasn't like they weren't giving public tours. It was still considered a closed facility. So getting to see a lot of where the Soviet space history was made was really overwhelming. I got to tell you guys, and it overwhelming in the sense of seeing where things had happened, but it was basically just rusted relics at that point, or buildings that had fallen apart. That was one of the issues they were dealing with there. Is they couldn't afford to do maintenance on the buildings, and if we remember correctly, the shuttle Buran, their orbiter that actually flew, we got to go see it. We weren't allowed to take pictures of it at the time, and in fact,
I didn't think it did. It fly? I don't think it flew.
Yeah, it did flew on the Energia booster. It flew once and came home. Okay. They ran out of money, and once this was back, it flew still under Soviet Union.
Yeah.
In 2000, they had it mounted on a mock-up of a Buran booster, and they were looking for somebody to help pay to get it because it was a heavy lift and so forth. I was mentioning they wouldn't let us take pictures, but one of the things they did to prevent people to take pictures unless this is an old Soviet thing, they had some very weird color temperature lights that I was told if you try to take a photograph with your standard everyday film that everybody uses, you would get just a washed out mess. and since we were guests there, we didn't want to get in trouble, so we didn't. But we got to crawl around the Buran Energia stack, and unfortunately, a few years later, the roof on the building collapsed and destroyed the Buran. And there, to this today, I believe there are two follow-on airframes that they were going to construct. I think one was called Sparrow, and one was called Snow. I don't know what the Russian words for those are.
Buran is snow. Buran means snow.
Oh, Buran was snow. I have Sparrow, and I think the other one may, in fact, been a test article. But they're still in the other hangars over there, and there are people trying to get them out of the country, get them out of that building, because that building is going to collapse also. There just isn't the money to keep the facility running.
Yeah, they had big money issues, and a lot of those engineers would keep working even so. And crazy.
Well, when the Soviet Union fell, their economy basically collapsed, and they I don't know what the payment status is, but the last I heard that Russia had to pay Kazakhstan essentially about $1 billion a year to fly out of there, out of Baikonur, and that's why the Russians have built another launch facility, but they can't afford to fly. I mean, they can't. The program is a shell of its former greatness, and that's very depressing for me.
Yeah. Okay. So other things. Bashir says Sun Ra was right. In 1972, he and his orchestra recorded "Space is the Place." Oh,
yeah, I remember that. I vaguely remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
There was one before that, Jeff. Did you already show it?
Oh, yeah. Cliff says Fusion. It lasted 20 seconds, I think, but working on longer. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And, Dave and I got to stand on top of the Artemis Tower. What a view.
Really? Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. AC's 20. Oh, okay. They're arguing now.
And they can see each other's comments on YouTube.
Yeah.
They're both over on YouTube. This is great.
Starts for millions. Yeah. The saddest part of the early U.S. space program hit me when I stood at the remains of the pad of Apollo 1 and read the brass plaque. And, of Grissom was to be the first on the moon, by the way. Yep.
That's actually correct. If you talk to anybody who was involved with that, and of course they hadn't announced it, but there was a lot of talk and chatter, and he was essentially the go-to guy. He was the lead astronaut.
He got sick though, right?
Well, that was Alan Shepard. Yeah, that's why
okay.
he didn't fly during the Mercury missions. He had an inner ear issue, and that's why he eventually became. That's what created the chief of the astronaut office, because he couldn't fly, but he basically managed the astronauts. And Gus would have been, because he flew the first mission for Gemini, so he was going to have the first Apollo mission, and he would be the guy who would walk on the moon. So that was very sad.
What happened exactly? I don't think I know.
Oh well, the Apollo 1 fire in 1967.
Okay, yeah.
I actually give a speech about space history and lessons learned about the Apollo 1 fire, the Challenger accident, the Columbia accident, and about how they all happened at at increments of time, lost knowledge, generational period. The Apollo 1 fire happens, you have a generation of people learn that lesson, and then they move on, and you get a new group of people who don't know those lessons, never learned that lesson for whatever reason, and then mistakes are made, and you have the Challenger accident, and then a generation, and you have the Columbia accident. And that's my call to NASA as the aerospace industry as a whole, and hopefully it holds true now that we've got more people involved and history is easier to tell and so forth, to not fall into that trap. And that's called go fever, when you put aside safety and things like that because you've got a schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. So when flights get delayed, not that sad about it, because it means that they're not pushing it.
You didn't hear me complain once about an Artemis delay. Not once. Yeah. Even when I lost my deposit on a hotel.
Yeah. Okay, and AC. Yeah. I don't think we're giving Russia money right now.
Nope.
Because no telling where it'd go, for one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. More photos?
Sure. All right. So anyway,
the mini me.
Yeah, mini me. Right. That's my grandson Owen. When I decided to get back into space, and when my grandson was born, I had seen this small flight suit on a catalog or something. I decided to buy it. So when he was old enough, I pulled out my flight suit, which I could fit in again because I'd lost some weight. That was really about me getting in my flight suit. He was just an afterthought. No, I'm just kidding. So I got some patches put on. It was very cool to show it. I wanted to help, show the where we are and where we're going kind of thing, and hopefully create a future for my grandson.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So anyway, one of the things I did to get back into space and hopefully become a commercial astronaut was to volunteer at Space Center Houston. Another I-24 member by the name of Nathan Price, who is a International Space Station flight controller at Johnson Space Center, volunteered there, and actually was literally it was like early summer it was before school let out because my wife is still working, but I was sitting at home because my work takes me on the road, but there are times when I'm home, I have nothing to do. So I'm sitting and watching TV and I'm like bored to tears. And I thought to myself, I really need to find something to do, but just to keep me busy. And I didn't really have to make any money. How much money I make is no big deal. But and I never thought about volunteering. It was just like, I need to find something to keep me busy. And within a week, I get a call from Nathan saying, "Hey, have you ever considered volunteering at Space Center Houston?" And I knew Space Center Houston. I working at NASA, always taking family there. And there were times I would take family members through the Rocket Park, giving tours, but not go to Space Center Houston. Because back then, pre-COVID, you could go park at the parking lot there, go to the gate, the guard say, "Hey, I'm going to Rocket Park," and they let you go in the park and you could take your family. So that was always the quick and cheapest way to show people off. So I'd walk through, and inevitably I would start taking family and friends down there. And by the time I get like halfway down through there talking about this, that, I'd have a group of people, and people thought I did work at NASA, but they thought I was a tour guide, and I said, "Oh no, I'm just." So anyway, it was like an obvious thing to go do. So I signed up and got all certified, and that's when I started getting to talk to people, and getting to talk to 1,000 or so people every day about space and talk about the history of space and where we're going. It's one of those things that really opened me up. You're not going to believe this, but I can present evidence to the contrary that I used to be very shy. I wasn't very outgoing.
Mm.
I was an engineer. I was behind the camera. I never considered myself. I have a younger brother who's in front of the camera. But getting to be a tour guide or, a volunteer at Space Center in Houston, and Space Center in Houston does an absolute fabulous job of training its volunteers about specifics, history, and so forth. There's books and classes, and we get trained on everything, whether it's Rocket Park or the shuttle mock-up or Starship Gallery or anything out there. Their training is impeccable, and I consider it one of the highlights of my life to be involved with those people. And I tell you how much I took it to heart. I set the record for the fastest volunteer to 100 hours, 200 hours, and 300 hours. And just to put that in perspective, the minimum required number of hours per year is 60. So before December, I started in September. Before December, I had met my qualifications two times over. And it was just, I was home, and it was something I enjoyed doing. And the deal I put with my wife is I volunteer when she's at work. So I'm home with her, and I, volunteer 6 or 7 hours a day, which is a lot now. I don't have the time for that. But I think I'm probably going to be able to go in Sunday for a few hours and do that kind of stuff. But if anybody,
I volunteered at NASA Lewis. For 3 years.
I was going to ask you about that. Was that directly for NASA, or was there an outside, Space Center Houston is a nonprofit educational organization, and it's run in cooperation with Johnson Space Center?
Yeah, it was an outside operation, but we were in the NASA campus at the time. Now they've moved out to a separate museum,
which is becoming the standard because of security and so forth. But in the old days, before Space Center Houston, people literally would just drive on, and they'd park in an area, and Building 2, which is Building 2 South, which is the auditorium, and back then the backside of Building 2 South was where the museum was. They had a shuttle mock of Payload Bay and models and pictures, and there was a balcony you would walk up and look at all different hardware and stuff. Funny enough, once Space Center Houston came online, I think it was about 1995, and they got all the stuff out there, I was part of the team that built the TV studios in that old facility that I used to go through when I was younger. So it was really weird working in an area, turning it into a television studio with control rooms and studios and cameras, working somewhere I used to wander through and dream about and drool, going, I want to be an astronaut.
I was at Lewis right around then. That was the end of when I was a volunteer there. Interesting.
But by the way, if any listeners, viewers are ever going to come to Houston and they want to go to Space Center Houston, give me a call. I can set you up.
Okay.
Cool.
Some more comments.
You got some more comments. Yeah.
Daniel, hurry up itis. Yeah. Go fever. Hurry up itis.
Yeah. Hurry up itis. Yep. Yeah.
The old thing of there are old pilots and bold pilots. There are no old, bold pilots.
That's correct.
As a former pilot myself, yeah.
Okay.
Sick tour ad Astra, guys.
Yep.
The way to the stars.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Yep. It won't. Don't get rid of the old folks, as they knew how it did work, and they can't make it F1 engines. There's no one alive who knows how it worked. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, that's not true. One of our volunteers at Space Center Houston worked on the F1 engines. He has some great stories about that. And we actually have several other volunteers. We have one gentleman named Ken who worked on the lunar module, worked for Grumman, and has some great stories. I love Ken. He's a great guy. He was very shy when he came in. He was in my class, when we were going with the training and so forth. And one day it was cold enough that I ended up wearing my blue flight jacket when I used to fly. And it was showing off, has NASA patches, and I got my name badge and stuff up. He goes, "That's a really cool jacket." And I said, "Yeah, well, you got to have something cool. You work for Grumman. I mean, come on, that's the great old days." And he said, "Well, next time I see you, I'll see you." So the next time I saw him, it was a couple days later, he had this gorgeous leather, flight bomber jacket. And on the back of it was this giant Grumman logo in all this gold thread. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I said, "Wow, when did you get it?" "Oh, they gave him all the staff, that kind of thing, back when that was a normal thing." I'm like, you want to trade? And he goes, "No way."
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. AC. We need to get Nerva project restarted again. Yeah,
the
nuclear thermal.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people talking about that. There's a lot of people convinced that that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
If not completely nuclear to drive an ion drive, because the 6 months or so every 26 months to get to Mars is early on. That's doable, but it's going to become problematic over long term. We do need a faster way to get there, and we need a way to get back and forth other than waiting every 26 months, because you're going to have situations where that's going to work.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And well, Cliff, same here with Shy. I have a hard time believing that, Cliff. I know you. Don't have a TV camera mic, or I'll be in front. Yeah.
All because of astronomy. Yeah, cool.
Well, he does demos a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
He just,
I'm sure it was always inside of me. I just had no reason to be outgoing. There was always sparks of that, but there my mother always tells a story. That when I was when 4 boys were all within like 5 years of each other, so we're all like 1, 2, 3, 4, and whenever they took a family picture, they could only find I'd be like hiding behind my mom's dress or something like that. But I came out of my shell. It took a little while.
Yeah. Okay, Rocket Future. Hope they bring back the Level 9 tour or something similar, so I can see MBL in the room of mock-ups.
Actually, Lambda, they've been rebranded as a VIP tour. They have the NBL tour. They have a couple of those. They have you can go to the Apollo Air Mission Control, to the gallery stuff. It's a whole new series. After COVID, they decided to rebrand it and so forth. So yeah, there actually is. It's something you have to set up in advance. You can't just show up the day that you're going to go. You have to set it up online and so forth, because there's security clearances and things like that.
Yep. Yeah, same with JPL. In fact, during the shutdown, they put the tour online, and it is fabulous. In fact, they take you back behind some places that you never get to go to on the tour.
That's great. That's great.
Yep. And you get about 8 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I was going to ask you, have you seen Goodnight Opie?
Not yet.
No.
Oh, the story of Spirit and Opportunity. Yeah, you have to see it. It's absolutely fabulous. And it's touted as the story of Spirit and Opportunity, really more about opportunity, the little rover that could kind of thing. But the reality is, it's about the people there and how they brought life to those vehicles, and they adopted them, made them real people, creatures with character and so forth. And it's I teared up.
Love to see it. We did a whole show on the JPL tour that's online now. It's pretty
cool.
Yeah. We got a couple more, Jeff.
Yep. Hoping to be back in 2024 for the next eclipse.
Cool. Yeah.
And with that, Vasimir, we can get to Mars in less
2
than 2 months.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah, even if you're only pulling 1/10 of a G, that's still an awful lot of velocity you can get.
Yeah. Well, and the 1/10 of a G would be very helpful for the astronauts too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the heart and for the bone mass.
The density, yeah.
Yeah, bone density and so forth. Yeah. And also, I think they've talked about, well, not recently, but in the last couple of years, about red blood cell loss, and that's associated with the bone marrow. And that's something else they're going to have to deal with. Develop countermeasures for that kind of thing.
Yeah, calcium in the blood is not great either. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Rocket Future looks like
I'll get it scheduled.
Yeah,
he's down in South Texas at Starbase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was up. I believe he was living in Boston. Decided he's an IT guy. He works online. He decided he could live anywhere and packed it all up and moved to South Texas and covers Starbase now. I think I guess I'll ask a question later. Right, Lambda, were you there for the S-24 test fire? I'll wait for his answer. I think he was, but I didn't see him.
Yeah. Oh, Cliff, I think he's explaining why he's not shy anymore. Right, Pomona Astronomy Club, president of the car club, and he has a Corvette. Okay.
Did change me.
AC. Last time I was in Houston, they still had the Skylab mock-up in the tour. With the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the mock-up's now over at Space Center Houston in Starship Gallery, and it's one of the more popular ones because it's, we talk about it's the predecessor to the International Space Station. And a lot of people don't know this, but we're talking about the shuttle program earlier about it. It was delayed. It was originally supposed to launch in 1977, and one of its first missions, I don't remember if it was going to be the first one, but one of the early missions was going to go to the Skylab and boost it. And Skylab was going to serve as the core for our space station. So you can imagine if the shuttle had gotten online, history would be much different. We'd had our space station, and the shuttle program probably would have been, well, not as it was never as efficient as it was advertised originally. But we would have definitely a different space history right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Might not be much actually, because the Russians had some
there.
good modules that we didn't have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, one of the other plans was, because we still had the backup space Skylab, because you always build two, right? Was that they were going to take one of the Saturn V's they had left over and launch it, and there was going to be a dual. It would have obviously been a slightly different configuration. They'd learned their lesson from the first Skylab launch about the solar panels and the heat and the micrometeor shield protecting that and so forth. So we would have had some kind of configuration, and then shuttles would have been docking with and so forth.
I did not know that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Cliff. They missed out in 2017 because of flooding from a hurricane. Yeah. And Rocket Future might have missed the beginning of.
I was just curious. Oh yeah, I was Lambda. I'll speak slowly. Were you at S-24's firing? I'm pretty sure he did because I was talking to him earlier today. So.
Yeah. Okay. And we're pretty much caught up on comments right now.
Okay. The guy's got to think more material before we can go forward.
Let's see.
What do you got where are we on the pictures? I think it was. There we go. Okay. So we talk about me coming back to space, and the real pivotal moment was, of course, Inspiration 4. So we all go out there. There's 24 of us there. And the morning before the launch, well, actually the night before the launch, we decided, somebody said, I had a guy who told me he's got a boat. He'll take us out and we can go up right next to the rocket. And we're like, wow. Damn, let's do that. So we all threw our money in the bucket and we went out and got up at dawn and rode out there in the choppy waters, and we're all getting a little seasick, and we get out there and we had to spend about an hour kind of floating around out there and shot a lot of pictures and shot some video and so forth. And that was about 12 hours before launch. And then we went back to land, and then went out and watched the launch.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And one of those things, anything you do now, any of these things I do, getting to do it with people, friends, is just makes it so much special.
Yep.
I don't believe I sent you the video, or maybe I didn't. I also got, so the Artemis 1 launch was a month ago now? A little over a month ago now. Because I traveled for work, I was in north of Jacksonville. I was actually in Georgia. And when they made the announcement, they were set the clock and they said it, and I'm going, man, I'm going to be up in Georgia. Let me look at that. It's like, that's like a 3-hour drive. But I get off work at 4 and the launch is at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I still had my launch pass so I could go to the VIP area. So I convinced one of my coworkers, who's a photographer, who was coming along with me a couple of launches. I bought him a pass for the visitor center. And so we jumped in the rental car and drove down there, got there like 8 o'clock at night. And of course we hit the traffic going into Space Center and got there just in time. I got on the bus, got out there, and two of my other I-24 teammates, Carlos Risk Hernandez and Olivier Chef, and I can't pronounce his last name, Chef, were there, and we got to watch the launch, and it was incredible because we'd been to all the other scrubs. It was like, no, we're not going down. Everything was going so smooth. Like, well, something's going to go wrong, and then they had that issue with the IT router on the range computers and stuff. I'm like, Christ, I can fix that. Give me, they needed 45 minutes. Going, it doesn't take that long to replace an IT router. But anyway, and then the red team got to go. When the red team got out there to tighten down the plumbing so that it wouldn't leak, the crowd went nuts. It was incredible. And of course, it launched and it turned night into day and burned my retinas, and that's the way I like it. I'm a serious proponent of not recording a rocket launch. Trust me, everybody. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of cameras out there with better lenses than your iPhone, all around the pad. So if you
just feel it.
Yeah, they're shooting in 4K, way better than you're ever going to see. So just watch it with your eyes. I got working at NASA, I spent a lot of time covering launches and landings, but I did quite a few. I did about 12.5 launches, maybe 20 launches in some capacity at Kennedy Space Center. But I only ever got to watch 2 with my naked eye. And there, I intentionally watching all these other people with their little cameras. I'm like, stop it. And those memories are burned in. If you were to pick any random shuttle launch and put it up, I couldn't tell you. I might be able to give you a rough age estimate, year estimate of when it was, whether it was high definition or it was analog 4x3 or stuff, something rough like that. But I can't tell one launch from the other. But the launches I've watched with my eyes are vivid. I know exactly what happened. I remember the clouds, the lights, everything like that. And watching the Artemis 1 launch, I'll remember was the burned retina, because I wouldn't look away. People were looking, covering their eyes. Nope, I'm not going to look away. But the sound, like you said, Pam, you got to experience the sound. Now, because I experienced shuttle launches, I remember been told, "Hey, let the acoustic beat on your chest," and I remember like that. Artemis was 25% louder and more powerful than the shuttle, so it was going to be a real thing. And I was at the same approximate place I watched for, so I put my chest out and let it feel on the thing. But which was great feeling to feel again. But the part I wasn't expecting was the building behind me, which was the building that they have their Saturn V rocket at Kennedy. And it's a sheet metal building, corrugated sheet metal building. And it started to vibrate at this really weird signature, and it sounded like frogs croaking. You can actually hear it on the audio. It was weird. And I didn't notice it when it happened in real time, but I listened to it later, and I was like, wow, that's, something I didn't know, But anyway, so the launch happened about 1:45 a.m. We jumped back in the rental car, drove back to Jacksonville, or up north of Jacksonville, got to the hotel this time, take a shower, go to work. So I didn't sleep that night.
Oh, yeah, you're a spacer. No question.
Yeah, could not do it. Oh, yeah. I still get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and watch a Starlink launch. And that's, to me, I've got a serious addiction problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of addictions, perfect segue. Speaking of addictions, so I flew 0G back in the 90s, and then recently had an opportunity to fly 0G with the Space Plus 5 astronauts, candidates. It happened on October 23rd at the Kennedy Space Center, matter of fact. And this is me. They let me wear my blue flight suit. I can still fit in it. This is a picture of me just floating there having fun. And there's a video next. Is that the last picture?
No, there's one more picture. Let's just show.
And this is it. This is the group I flew with. There's me in my blue suit. And starting from the left, that's Ruben Salinas. He's the gentleman who's going to fly next year on the New Shepard rocket. And next to him is Trent Tresh. He's one of the other Space Plus 5. He's out of the University of Arizona. He actually operates CHASE, which is the Center for Human Exploration. They do training for commercial astronauts with spacesuit training and emergency egress training and that kind of things. And then there's myself, and the gentleman behind me, and there's Keith Yon, codename Code, or call sign Code. And he's a fortunate member of our group who is not part of the Space Plus, but Space Plus had originally was going to bring along 5 artists to create art on our flight, and one of them could not make it. So they had an extra seat, so Keith was able to step in and fill in. And talking about a bucket list kind of thing, he always wanted to do it. So it was great having Keith. And then just in front of him is Joanne Meisner, one of the Space Plus 5. She is an engineer at NASA there at Kennedy. She worked on DART, the double asteroid redirect. Very proud of her. She was very big into that. She was actually up there at the control center when it all went down. In front of her is Mike Mungo, another member of the Space Plus 5. Mike Mungo is basically an astronaut trainer, but he trains kids, young people and kids about careers in space, basically getting them started. He's big into STEM. And then next to Joanne is Dr. Cyan Proctor, the Inspiration 4 pilot. She was part of this project. She is a member of the Space Plus team as an advisor. And I got to know her. I actually met her back in April, back when they announced the Space Plus 5 in New York. And she is just a wonderful human being. And I'm so honored to get to know her. And then just to her left, the young woman is Sydney Hamilton. She is another one of the Space Plus 5. And then behind those two is and I don't remember the artist name, but he goes by the name of CL7, a photographer artist. And then the gentleman on the far right in the really snazzy flight suit, the silver flight suit, is a photographer that goes by the name of Raven. He took took a lot of photographs on the flight, and he's one of the people that created some art during the flight. So that's our little team photo after the flight. And we're all leaning because we're a little tired at that point. We didn't realize until after we took the picture, the three of us are kind of this way, like, why were we doing that? Because we were leaning on each other because we're really tired.
Yeah.
And zero G is
It's a
fun.
good tired,
when
though, right?
when you're doing those parabolas, because you're flying, it's 0G for 30 seconds, then you have a 2G pull up.
Mm-hmm.
It's tiring. And even when you lay flat, so you don't get worry about motion sickness, it wears on you. After 15 parabolas, I remember getting up and going, I'm too old for this now. But I'm not really too old for that. So.
You only feel that way after, right? Not before.
Well, and it turns out it wasn't that I'm old. It turns out it's the drop of the adrenaline. You have that huge adrenaline rush when you start doing it, and then when you come off that adrenaline high, your body just like collapses. I got back to my seat and fell asleep.
Yeah. Well, you burned all those calories because of the adrenaline.
Yeah, and of course, what did we do? We went to the space bar on top of the courtyard and ate nachos for like 6 hours. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
you got some more comments, right?
Yeah. Lots more comments. Okay. Do comments. Okay. So, let's see.
I don't even know where you are.
Cliff, we missed out on going to Houston. Yeah, because of the hurricane. Yeah.
Hurricane, yeah.
Lambda, ha ha ha. Yes, it was good. Hopefully S-24 will be good to go for orbit now.
That's right. We're all crossing our fingers for that first launch of Super Heavy and Starship. Of course, the mission is going to be, they're not, even though the vehicles are designed to be reusable, they're going to expend them just because they're trying to grow the flight envelope a little bit at a time. So they'll probably, in both cases, the vehicles will attempt a landing if there was a drone ship out there, but they'll let them fall in the water and tip over and that kind of thing. But the data they'll get from them, and SpaceX, they have the numbers, they have the math, they have the know-how to land those vehicles. It's a matter of reliability and improving out the technology in there, so forth.
It's amazing.
There was actually we were joking earlier on a call with some of the I-24 members earlier that the launch they had early this afternoon, there was delayed confirmation of the Falcon 9 booster landing on the drone ship. And it's one of those things is uncharacteristic of their broadcast. And when you don't get that sign, because you're so used to the cadence, launches, separation, booster comes down, does a berm, then it's kind of the regular thing. You expect to see it. It still amazes me. I still get goosebumps when they land it. And when you don't see that, you're like, what? We just had a leak on the space station with a Soyuz coolant leak. So, oh my God, we got more space bad news. No, they just didn't confirm it because they didn't have the telemetry and because of the water, whatever. So your heart skips a beat a little bit because, as successful as SpaceX is with their Falcon 9 boosters, and I want them to be, I want it to get boring. It's as good, it's boring. But there will be a day.
Space is still hard.
Yeah, space is still hard. And they will, a booster for whatever reason, will in fact have an issue. And that's just the math about it. But it's not the end of the world kind of thing. So
that's why there were so many failures to begin with for SpaceX, because he wanted to he didn't never considered anything a failure if he learned what was wrong.
Exactly.
Fail forward fast. Yep.
It's just two sides of the same coin. NASA has their way and Elon had his way, and they're both viable ways of doing it, as it's been proved out. They're just different. And that's why early on, there was this whole image or perception that SpaceX was doing something wrong. Hey, NASA never had this problem. Oh, yeah? You want to go see some of those early launches in the early 60s? Holy moly.
Well, and they have their whole thing is failure is not an option. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, they test and test and test, and then they launch. And they've been proven out. SLS, while it had a lot of bad press about the hydrogen leaks, and having worked in the shuttle program where hydrogen leaks were the norm. I remember they called it the summer of hydrogen leaks, where we didn't launch all summer. It was like, when are we, but they had to figure that stuff. Hydrogen's tough. People don't realize hydrogen can get through anything. Hydrogen can literally get through solid objects.
Tunnels through metal,
exactly. So, and it's
amazing.
That's just, there was also, at one point, there was a whole debate. Did NASA make a mistake by selecting hydrogen option? What do you mean mistake? It was the right fuel for the right mission for the right rocket. I mean, that's how you do it. That's what NASA's about. They've invented all this new technology. Don't give them a chance. And of course, Artemis proved out to be a very reliable rocket because it was based on heritage technology, shuttle engines, shuttle SRBs. I mean, that stuff was all proven out. That kind of technology, that's amazing that works so well. I mean, I'm glad for it. And then the Orion capsule, the Orion and the ESA service module, near perfect. I've got friends at the Johnson Space Center. Well, I'm like, hey, did you hear, what any nitpicky things? Says, no, there's nothing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens to SpaceX if Elon goes puff?
Fortunately, SpaceX is in his rearview mirror now. He's the kind of engineer gets there. He was living at Starbase. He was there, and he talks about this actually in several interviews with Tim Dodd, that designing a new vehicle is tough. Designing, getting it, making manufacturing work where you're repeating the thing, that's the hard part. Repeating it, getting it where and that's why he was there, was help trying to get. And Tesla went through the same thing. They had all kinds of issues trying to get their manufacturing up to speed. And that's the hard part, is getting that manufacturing assembly line working. And because you need it to be constant, you need to have quality control in the whole 9 yards. But fortunately for I don't want to say everybody, but SpaceX is in his rearview mirror now. He has something else to worry about. And Glenn and the folks at SpaceX have it completely under control. They're going to make it all work, and nobody should worry about that.
Yep. Oh, and
Nice.
Don says, I was wondering where to find Rocket Futures videos.
Go into YouTube and just Google or just select Rocket Futures.
Okay.
Rocket Future, yeah. He's a YouTube channel.
Okay.
That means Lambda owes me one.
Yeah.
I get credit for every person I send to him.
Well, and I was thinking Lambda can always post it in the comments here too.
That's true. He can go and pass them on. Yeah.
I think Bashir is talking about the driving down to to Kennedy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Red Eye Express is exactly right.
Did you see the Delta II launch back then?
Boy, I worked on the Delta II, but I didn't see it launch, I don't think.
Oh, that's too bad. I think my first launch was an Atlas, an unmanned Atlas out of the Air Force Base on the south side. It was actually when my son was like less than a year old. We went over to Florida, and it was cold. It was a cold, cloudy day that nobody had any business being outside in Florida, which was highly unusual. But they launched through it. That was amazing.
And Cliff, would you be a great guest on the Stay Curious show with Mark Q at the Space and Astronaut Museum in Titusville near.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know that. And yeah, exactly. In fact, one of our members goes by the call sign Saturn. She actually works up at Marshall Space Flight Center at the museum at U.S. Space and Rocket Center, and she was down for the Artemis. One of the Artemis launch tries, and she got interviewed at. Yeah, there's somebody else we got to hook up with and talk. Stay Curious. They've got that little museum down there. It's very cute. Not cute. It's great.
And then Cliff some more. Oh, thanks, Cliff.
Thank you. Yeah, we're having fun. A little bit late here, but
next to the 2 SpaceX boosters that came back at KSC.
Yeah, I saw one of them. I saw a time lapse just a while ago of one of them coming back. You got to think. People don't think about this, but who the busiest people at SpaceX are the guys driving, taking care of those drone ships, because they're always moving. I mean, they literally, that's the only thing that's slowing them down. They've got one on the West Coast and 2 on the East Coast, and I worry what happens if one of those things goes down. Their launch cadence is going to drop off. I mean, what are we up to? We're up over 50 launches so far, right? We're up over 55, I think it is. Yeah, we still got a couple weeks left. I mean, they're breaking records left and right.
Yeah. And AC, Artemis didn't test life support. Well,
that's true. Well, that's true. They didn't put the human rated test system, but they did have an atmosphere and they had to have cooling for the equipment and so forth. But it wasn't in I don't believe it was in vacuum.
Yeah, no.
Sure thing, Lambda. Checks in the mail, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the Delta 2 that went boom.
Yes. There's been
Yeah.
an anomaly. Very famous line.
Yeah.
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 There
Very
we go.
few of them did that, though.
There you go. So, yeah, anyone who wants to find Lambda, there he is.
YouTube
Cool.
at the
And
Rocket
Lambda,
Future.
you are welcome to be on our show as well. So
Absolutely, you got to get it. You got to get everybody. I mean, you've seen the list of people we have on the group.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, you know what? I
Right.
just with like a month ago, I was watching a show that they, for some reason, they talked about that long shot where they're looking down the road, and the unspent, unburned solid rocket propellant was falling on cars.
Mm.
That was after Challenger, wasn't it? Shortly after Challenger.
I don't know the timeline for that.
Yeah, there was an
That's the one I'm
expendable
thinking
launch.
about.
There was an expendable launch, I think, in '86 that also had an anomaly, but I don't know if it was that one or not. Maybe some of our viewers can check it out for me.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I see Lambda said would love to.
Yeah.
Video next.
Excellent. Yeah.
Video
So
next, Jeff?
let me just give you an interest in the video. So as part of our flight in October, I was able to acquire 3 of the 0G indicator puppy replicas that they flew on Inspiration 4. It's the St. Jude's puppy, essentially. It's a little stuffed animal, and they flew one on Inspiration 4, and so St. Jude was selling them for charity. So I acquired 3 of them and got Dr. Proper to autograph them, and we took them on the flight. So you can roll the video.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to raffle them off for St. Jude's, to benefit St. Jude's. And what you can do if you want to enter, if you go to Twitter and you go to the tweet went live when we went on the air. You go to either my Twitter or the Inspired 24 Twitter. That should be that. Yeah, there we go. You can see the instructions. Basically, you use a link. You go and you make your donation, whatever amount you want, and you do a screen grab of it, and you DM, direct message it to me, and they'll put you in the raffle, and then we'll start drawing names on January 1st, and 3 people will get to win autographed puppies, St. Jude puppies from Dr. Proctor.
Nice.
All to benefit St. Jude.
Cool.
But I think I sent you some more pictures. I want to jump right into those real quick, because
no, those were the only pictures that I saw.
Okay, there was a addition to put an add-ons folder in that Google or that Dropbox drive.
Oh, okay.
You're muted, Pam.
Oh no, whenever we run video, it messes with her timing.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry about that.
Yeah, she's back.
What?
Right. That was in that email I sent you right before the show, Jeff.
Oh, okay. So hang on.
What I can do while you're looking that up, I can give our viewers a little heads up. So there's an organization out there called Astro Access, and what they are is a group started by George
Whitesides?
Whitesides. Sorry, I was going to say White House. Whitesides. And essentially, Astro Access is around to make space accessible to everyone, and that includes people with disabilities, wheelchairs, amputees,
Cool.
the deaf, blind, any kind of disability. And so they were coming to Houston to do their 0G flight. They do one a year. They did a flight last year. I don't remember where it was at, but this year it ended up coming to Houston. Well, when I heard about it, one of our I-24 members, Kelly Looney, was part of their group, and she let me know they were coming. So I said, I'm going to take the week off just so I can be here to help. So I volunteered for them, reached out to them, and I said, whatever you need done. And she says, you want to get drinks and food and stuff? Like, absolutely. This is my neighborhood. I'm like a couple miles from you guys. I can tell you where to go, give you information, all the best restaurants and so forth. So I'm picking up water, picking up food, going to Chipotle, picking up, barbecue and so forth. And the zero-G plane coming over experienced an electrical problem, so they had to land in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And then by the time they got it fixed, we had some bad weather come through, so they weren't able to fly over. So they had to push their flight from Wednesday to Thursday. Well, I had talked to several people there about how I used to fly zero-G, and I just flew a mission. And all of a sudden they come in, I'm sitting on my computer, and George comes in and says, Andrew, I heard you flew zero-G. And I said, yes, I did. And I told him what I did, and I'd done the reasoning. He goes, well, we got an open position. You want to fly? I'm like, yes, sir. Put me in, coach. So I got to fly with the Astro Access people, which getting to meet those people. They're the most wonderful group of people I could have ever met. Every one of them. Cool. They're all volunteers. Everybody is a volunteer there. And these are all kinds of professionals who happen to be handicapped. And they have the same goal as we do, is getting everybody to space. So they had several different experiments they were working on. They were working on a couple of them where people, depending on their disability, they were trying to prove that people, either they were paralyzed or blind, could get in and out of a launch seat and put launch and entry seat and put on their 5-point harnesses. And so I ended up working with Dr. Sherry Wells Jensen, who is blind, and helping her. I was basically her safety person to make sure she didn't float away, because the parabolas only last for about 30 seconds. So you don't get a full length of time you do it. So we had to break it up. And there were issues with people floating away. And you, of course, got people floating in place. You got feet and elbows flying over. You saw in that video, it was, if you don't get run into by somebody or kicked in the head, you're not having fun.
Someone was very energetic there.
Yeah, well, we had some young people who were just going nuts, and I don't blame them. But as long as everybody's safe, there's a lot of safety going on. Zero-G does a very good job about keeping people safe and keeping them comfortable too. They're very good at the keeping people from experiencing any kind of motion sickness and so forth.
Cool.
But so I got to fly on this thing. It was totally unexpected. But I should have known something like this was happening, because that morning that this was Wednesday morning, and they hadn't, at that point, before I went over to help, did not know that the flight had been delayed. It had been delayed in the day, but we didn't know it had been, at that point, had been delayed for the next day. And I decided to get out my blue flight jacket I talked about. It has my NASA patches and stuff like that. And I looked at the arm over here. I have I don't know if you guys ever seen the green Snoopy, which is kind of the logo, the zero-G Vomit Comet logo. And I looked at it and goes, that doesn't look right for some reason. So I pulled out my flight suit, because I have one that I got back in the 90s, the original one. I said, you know what, this one I have in my jacket, it's a replica, but that's fine. It's replica. And instead of hanging my flight suit back up in the closet, I hung it up out on the door for some reason. I have no idea at that point. And then George comes in and says, you want to fly? I'm like, well, yeah, I got my flight set out this morning, so I guess I get to fly. So it was pretty exciting. Did you get those pictures up yet?
Yes.
Okay,
Here we go.
This is the zero-G plane. It's a modified 727. Tim Bailey is a gentleman who basically is the guy I've been talking to. He's kind of their public view. He helped source this vehicle and get it modified and so forth, and they got certification. They actually fly this under standard FAA rules with a waiver to do the aerobatic stuff, and they have to have specific airspace to fly in. So getting on the plane, you had to go through TSA. You had to go through a metal detector, show your ID, the whole 9 yards. What's the next
one? They run it as a private flight. Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, so that it's really happening when the patch goes on. So they put the Astro Access, their Astro Access triangle patch, and then the next one is the mission patch. Go ahead and hit the next picture.
Okay, hang on. They didn't quite download in order. There we go.
There we go. And that's the Astro Access Flight 2 mission patch. You can see they've got people from Australia, Germany, Brazil, US, and Spain. And you can see the different in little silhouettes there of the different handicaps that they indicate that they're supporting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool. And like I said, for me, it's real when you see it on a patch. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is Dr. Sherry Wilson Jensen. I only knew her as Sherry. I didn't realize she was a doctor till afterwards. But she is one of the most courageous human beings I have ever met in my life, with way more confidence than somebody should ever have. But at one point during the flight, late, I think it was, we were like parabola 13 or 14. She had essentially proven out that she could do what she needed to do: get in the seat, find the harnesses, get them plugged in, and get out, in and out, and get them proved. It was no problem for her. This was her second flight also, so she was very confident in what she was doing. And at one point, she gets out of the seat about halfway through the parabola and says, "I want to do a handstand," and puts her head in the seat and puts her feet up on the ceiling. And I'm like, ah, screaming like, and because within a 2 seconds they called feet down, coming out, which is what they tell you when they come out. And without even missing a beat, she just kind of does a perfect maneuver and lays flat on the ground, belly down, as we hit 2G. And George Whiteside saw her go down and reached over and said, "Sherry, are you okay?" And she was laughing just uncontrollably. I said, "Yeah, fine. She's fine." I just held her down to make sure she didn't move. And the gal with her is Brenda, who's part of their ground logistics. Another wonderful human being. She was my boss technically there, and I didn't find out I was going to fly 0G until like 9 o'clock Wednesday night, and I was actually on a video call with a I-24 member in Australia, and the message popped up while I was talking to her, and it took every ounce of control in my body not to say, "Hey, I gotta go. I gotta fill out some paperwork." So I finished out the call, then I had to finish up the paperwork. I thought, "Oh, great, I can sleep well tonight. Everything's set up." Nope, didn't sleep a wink. And my biggest concern, believe it or not, was I had to go pick up the bagels for breakfast for everybody. So I went to pick up the bagels at the local bagel place in my flight suit. And Brenda was my boss.
Okay.
There's worse things out there.
Yes, there is. So this is a picture. That previous picture was during we had to set everything up and do a run through the morning before the flight. So this would have been Thursday morning. It was another setup. This is a young woman, German woman by the name of Nietzsche. She is paralyzed from the waist down, and on the right there, I don't know if you can see, that's astronaut Katie Coleman. She was working with her and using her experience in 0G to help work with they had developed. They were working on a harness that would connect at your waist, but it had some telescoping portions to it so you could maneuver yourself around. And they had this pegboard in front of them. They were going to try to turn them over. There was a white side and a black side. And so they were, working through ways to keep people in place, prove that this technology could work. So, in 0G, you have to restrain yourself either by tethers or foot restraints. And if you're a paralyzed person, you really can't use foot restraints. So you've got to have other mechanisms that would allow you to stay where you need to be. So that's what they were doing. They were prepping for that stuff.
Wow.
And the flight is just so new. We actually haven't got all the photography off the plane yet. So this is one picture that they published and they let us know some of our members of our crew enjoying. I believe this is the lunar maneuver, because when 0G does a flight, they don't take you right into 0G. They do a couple lunar gravity, one third gravity, or excuse me, Martian 1/3, and then they go lunar. So this one went lunar, so you could jump around. It's like, remember the astronauts in their EVA suits on the Apollo missions hopping across there, and so everybody gets to hop. And they tell you when you hop, you got to pull your legs up, so you're not like you're standing there. You got to hop it down. Everybody's getting acclimated. They call it the acclimation parabolas, and of course, the 0G is so addictive. When I flew in October, one of the things is we all talked about it. Man, we're on the bus going back, and we're like, yeah, we're screwed, man, because we're addicted to this stuff. I want to go back. And that's why getting to fly again was just a miracle for me. And I had the same feeling when I got done. Even though I didn't actually get to play, I was doing safety, so I was doing a lot of fixed position. I had my feet in restraints hanging on and trying to keep Sherry from floating away and so forth. I still had a great time. And the one thing that after the flight, you realize everybody is grinning just like ear to ear. And we talk about, well, when you go home, you'll have to take your doctor to give you a grinectomy, because you're never gonna lose that smile. Yeah. So anyway, one of the things they do, when you fly 0G is to get your name badge, and they let you put your name. So I put my call sign Titan, and so we came off the plane, and everybody was milling around waiting for the sun to go down to go get some dinner, and I decided to take a picture of my name badge next to the 0G plane.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And
that was post-flight. There's myself on the left, and of course, astronaut Katie Coleman on the middle. And the gentleman on the right is Dwayne Fernandez, who is a double amputee from Australia. And this guy is unbelievable. Everybody there is like, you couldn't write a better script for these people. If these were all actors with lines. Dwayne is a high energy guy. He has the blades. He was proving about double amputees' ability to move around in microgravity and so forth. And he's like me. He's a high energy guy. He's always great to be around. And he I don't want to give anything away, but one of the things they talk about after you do that kind of thing is you've got a lot of emotions that you have to, and thoughts that you need to process. And one of the things they encourage you to do is to get that down, record it, just like a big data dump, just give all your emotions. He decided to do his by writing a poem. And Dwayne's very serious about it, but he's kind of a humorous person and so forth. And he's going to publish the poem, and I don't want to give away, but it is a beautiful piece of I can't even describe it. He put his heart into it, and his humor, and it's just great. I think it really talks about, he's of course a very huge proponent for full accessibility for all people, and he put that into it. And I'm hopefully you guys get to read his poem one day when he finishes publishing. He should be out soon. He only had to do a little spell check, and then he was ready to go.
Cool. So let's get some comments here.
Yeah, very cool space puppies. Yeah.
And Lambda?
No, actually, Lambda, everybody in I-20 are allowed, because it's going to be a blind drawing, and that's, we want everybody to sign up. I did a similar drawing with a VR headset a while back. Didn't get a lot of response, so we retooled our technique and so forth. But yeah, actually anybody can sign up. Just go, like I said, go to my Twitter account or the Inspiration 24, the Inspire 24 Twitter account, and there's, like I said, there's a link to donate, and then do a screen grab, and then DM it to me, and we'll put it in the bot, and we'll be pulling them out.
You see the complete failure.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the one I remembered. Yeah.
Yeah, 97. That makes more sense. Yeah.
It was after I left Boeing, but I do remember a lot about that one.
Ever celebrate Yuri's night? Are you kidding me? Tim Bailey, who's
everywhere,
part of the Zero G flight crew. He's one of the co-founders of Yuri's night. I have never been able to do it because of work schedules, but I'm making it a point this year to make sure I get an invite to one of the big ones, and then figure out some way to get there. Yeah.
I've been to the one in Los Angeles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
When Stephen Hawking did his Zero G flight, did he have to have any waivers for his flight?
That's a great question. From what I remember and what I've read, there was a lot of concern from friends and family about letting him fly. There was a lot of medical advisory about it and so forth. And eventually they, of course, let him fly, and he did fine. And that's part of the whole process. Like one of the things, before SpaceX and Inspiration 4, everybody thought you still had to be like a, Air Force pilot, test pilot to go fly. Well, now with
the right stuff.
Everybody, with long as you're in relatively healthy condition, can go to space. I mean,
Haley set the trend.
Yeah, exactly right there. And one thing about the flying on the Zero G plane with the parabolas and so forth is is different than actually going into space. Is when you go into space, you go from 1 G, you maybe got 2 Gs, you're going up, and then all of a sudden you're in 0 G. And some people still have issues with space adaptation syndrome, but they're over it. It's not well known, but Dr. Proctor had a little issue with it. And it's interesting that when the first videos came down live, I noticed, she had her arm wrapped around a footrest of one of the consoles or the chairs. And to me, that, I could just seeing it, and I asked her about it later. She said, she had a little issue with it. No big deal. You get over it, and then everybody's acclimated. But on the 0 G plane, you're going up and down, you're dealing with 2 Gs. So it becomes more of an issue on those 0 G planes than it does when you go into space. And as far as who can go, Worldview's rule of thumb for their balloon rides is if you can get in an airliner, you can go. If you can fly on a commercial airliner, you can go.
Perfect.
So that really, really opens it up. In fact, right now, because of FAA rules, they're only allowed 18 is the cutoff, the low end. But they're working with the FAA to extend it very quickly to extend it down to 16, and hopefully they want to get it down to 12.
Nice.
Because then you can start getting families and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, Cliff, I think they're going to have a disabled astronaut going up soon.
Actually, ESA just announced their latest astronaut candidate. They had a amputee sign, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. I apologize. I have to remember what it is. But that was actually something we talked about a lot with Astro Access. That look, ESA is leading the way on this kind of thing. So there's a lot of pressure, a lot of people expecting the next astronaut class that NASA announces. There's a hope that there'll be a disabled astronaut. So there's a call when there's a call put out for applications. You're going to see a lot of people applying that may have never applied before because of physical disabilities or other things. And I want to be one thing I told them, spending that time with the Astro Access folks. I as soon as I heard about them earlier this year, I was a supporter. I went and donated, and I reached out to them because I was hoping to connect with I-24 because we're looking for people, like-minded people. But it was just an issue. They were so busy. They're a volunteer staff, so they're those people are just working. If you hear some of the behind-the-scenes stories they have to do, they're working day and night. But after working with those folks for 4 days, getting to experience them and learn with them, I became an advocate, a very serious advocate. I'm going to be pushing for people to help and donate to Astro Access. Let's put that in Access. I believe it's .com. Somebody might, some of our members.
There we go.
Yeah, never mind the capitalization. They're a very worthy cause. They work on donations, and they deserve everyone's support. And there's a lot of great things flying around about, people bring up, I miscapitalize it, but that's me typing, so it will still work. There's a lot and this has been around. I'm sure you remember during the moon program. There were people go, why are we sending people to the moon? We've got problems here on Earth. And it was a very big social issue because we're talking about the late 60s, social turmoil, racial turmoil, the whole 9 yards. And something that's become the standard is a term called solve for space, solve for Earth. The technology we use to solve for space translate directly to the Earth. That comes from my friend Mike Mungo, who was one of the Space Plus 5. Mike is a very inspirational speaker. My English is good, and that's a great line. And I love using that because it's not like you're trying. I don't want to ever shut somebody up. I don't ever want to shut them down. I want them just to think about it. And when you say solve for space, solve for Earth, it's so natural. It's like, of course, that's what it is. And when I'm giving tours of the out at Rocket Park, the Saturn V rocket, which of course was designed in the late 50s, early 60s. This was before we had computers. But without the Apollo moon program, we wouldn't have things like cell phones. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have computers,
everything's
satellites,
touched by
MRIs, defibrillators. All of our lives have been enriched an order of magnitude because of that technology. Sure, it was a space race. It was a us versus them kind of thing, but it did spawn that, and we're a better species because of it.
Yep. Okay.
Everything spin-offs. That's the word.
Yeah.
Where can you get the patch? The red one. Oh, the Astro Access patch. Ooh, that's going to be a tough one. You're going to have to reach out to George and Anna at Astro Access. I believe, although I believe they're making plans to expand their store on the website to sell those things. They're already selling a lot of T-shirts with all their different. All their different designs that they've used. 4 patches are available as T-shirts right now. In fact, I just ordered one the other day. And they may, in fact, start selling the patches too, which obviously it's a good thing. Once you fly and everybody's got them, because everybody had them on their flight suits and stuff. It was great.
Yeah. Oh, and Dwayne.
Welcome. Someone new.
All right, my man.
Had a feeling this was someone you knew.
I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you coming on and staying up because I don't know how he dealt with the jet lag coming in from Australia, but he's I'm very happy to have met Dwayne, and I count him as a friend.
Cool.
And you're one lucky boy.
And you know what? I've felt that way most of my life. Well, not most. Within the last 10, 15 years, I've realized I always consider it to be lucky, but it turns out, and this is one of those things where a perfect stranger can really open your eyes. I mentioned that to somebody I believe it was on a Reddit chat. I was making comments, and my handle on Reddit, I'm going to completely give away my anonymity on Reddit, is NASA TV engineer. And of course I misspelled engineer, but that's because I had to. And
Yes.
somebody says, "Oh, you work at NASA?" And I said, "Yeah," and so forth. And I kind of was telling my story, and I said, "I consider myself very lucky." And the person responded and says, "That's not luck, man. You were the right guy for the right job. You were the right guy. You were in the right place for the job." And I look back and go, you're absolutely right. When you say you're lucky, you kind of give away some of your accomplishment. You lessen your accomplishment. And something I've learned, it's not boasting when you actually did it. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm just saying people should be able to take pride in their work and accept compliments and accept the good they've done. And because when you share that kind of thing with people, it gives them confidence to do it too. And you just have to spread the word. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Couple more comments from AC, and then I think we need to wrap it up. So,
okay.
AC,
and here.
any chance Sierra will give Dream Chaser paid flights?
If you're talking about, you mean a man flight? They obviously right now they have a cargo version, but of course Dream Chaser was originally designed to be a human-rated vehicle. That I believe is their long-term plans, is to bring the human-rated version up to service the commercial space station, which of course will include tourists. So I would imagine, yes, there will be paid. You will be able to buy a seat on a Dream Chaser. Probably going to be in the 70, 80, maybe $100 million range. So initially, it's going to be kind of tough for the average person, but you never know. There's a magic number that I keep hearing thrown around. I think it was $10,000 at this particular time, or whenever it was determined. That was the magic number if you get the ticket to space down to $10,000, the average person could afford to do it. We're nowhere near that, but of course, Worldview offers $50,000 to 100,000 feet, so it's a little bit of a compromise. It's kind of narrowing the gap. And I'll be honest with you, I still have a dream. I still openly talk about two things. One, becoming a commercial astronaut, but I tell my employer I'm looking to make a career change. And when you tell your boss, sometimes they get all wide-eyed and worried, which they probably should be. But it's something I want to do, and being able to, if I can't get to space right away, okay, so I'll do something in between that helps me continue my efforts to spread the dream and help spread the overview effect. That I think that's the best and most important thing the average space positive person could do right now, is help spread the overview effect. We need as many people as possible to go up either on the Worldview flights and spend 6 to 8 hours looking at our planet, or going in suborbital or going orbital to come back and tell their story. That's what Space for Humanity is all about. That's their primary goal. And at 24, we're trying to do the same thing. But it's great if we get as many people as possible. But what's even more important is that we need to get our politicians and our business leaders up there too, because those are the people who can make the change faster. So if you start getting your congressmen and your senators up on a Worldview flight and spend 6 to 8 hours up there looking and change their minds, imagine what we could do.
Yep. Okay. Dawn says, this has been a great chat. See you next time. So good night, John. And
thanks for being here.
Anyone remember the song Whitey's on the Moon? And Daniel says, I remember it, Gil Scott Heron. How do you remember stuff like this, Daniel?
Well, there is the internet.
Yeah.
Hey, Google.
Here's the internet. Yeah. I wouldn't be employed if it wasn't for the internet, to be totally honest. That's not a joke.
Yeah. And Cliff, hell, I have no idea how I got on top of the launch tower. But it took me back to Neil on the moon. That was luck.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of inside jokes here I'm not up to, but that's good.
Well, no, you asked him how he got to the top because when he was on the Artemis launch tower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mobile launch platform. That's what it's called. Yeah. Great show.
Oh,
I'm a big hit in Australia. That's great. Dwayne, if you're listening, I'm a big hit in Australia. We'll have to come down and take the show down there for full time.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Jeff, let's do the
Ephemeris,
stellar events.
Yep.
Yeah, skip the next one.
Yep.
'Cause
So
it's
some stellar
really late
events
here.
this week. Yep. December 16th through December 23rd. Globot Night is still running. It began December 15th and runs through December 24th. In the southern hemisphere, look for the constellation Grus. In the northern hemisphere, look for Pegasus. Each project lasts 10 days. The idea is you go out, take pictures of the constellation, compare them with pictures on the website, and report the light levels that it shows. And basically doing essentially a Bortle test for
Yeah.
citizens. Yeah, it's a great citizen science project. You can make a real contribution in 6 easy steps. And Mike Simmons, a guest who was on the show not too long ago, said it's very important.
Yeah.
And they just now started posting target dates for 2023, so we can keep giving you those after this one runs out.
Cool.
December 16th, last quarter moon. No weekly space hangout until 2023. They're on Christmas break now. December 21st, Mercury is at its greatest eastern elongation, the highest point before sunset looking west. And it's the solstice. December 22nd through 23rd, Ursa meteor shower peaks after midnight. It appears to come from Ursa Minor in the north, and peak rate is 5 to 10 per hour. And the source is the 8P Tuttle Comet. The moon is basically a new moon, so it's a great time to observe because there won't be too much light in the sky. December 23rd, Friday night show, and we'll pop in for a bit. Find us Fridays at 9 p.m. Pacific time on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel. And it's a new moon, like I said.
Yeah, skip those, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get through this. And so if you or someone you know has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, or astronomy, we'd love to share our live.
Yes.
Join us again next Friday, December 23rd. We'll pop in for a bit to wish you a Merry Christmas, tell you about the night sky, some events maybe, chat for a bit. We'll see what happens.
And on the 30th, we're going to do the Everyday Spacer review for 2022.
Cool.
Now, you want to do a shout out, Jeff? EC,
Oh, yes.
Daniel?
Yeah.
Great for hanging with us. Thanks so much.
Cliff, Daniel, Don, Dwayne, let's see, Lambda Rocket Future.
Yep.
Let's see, Bashir. Scott was in here somewhere.
Yep.
David's been here.
Don Jenkins, Cliff, David.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's who we saw in the chat today. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a great show with you. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me. Thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I love talking space. If anybody wants to keep talking, you can reach out to me through my Twitter or my Instagram. And of course, there's the Inspired 24.
You got some Spanish for that, right?
Yeah, the Inspired 24 is www.theinspired24.com, if I spelled it right. And if you want to learn more about us and even join the organization, there we go. There's a about us and there's a way to apply in a whole 9 yards. We just got that automated too. So Pam, you were the first one to go through that one.
Okay.
Before I was doing all manual and people would fall through the cracks and I'm like, well, who got their patch? By the way, speaking of patches, I'll be sending you your patch soon. Let me show you. Your Inspired 24 patch. You'll be getting This is my old wrinkly one up there like that. Yeah, and if anybody asks where you can get that patch, you got to be a member.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I think you just clocked us in our longest episode.
Yep.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. I unfortunately I seem to have that problem sometimes with other people too.
Yep. Okay. 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Oh man, I'm not going to get any sleep tonight. I got to take my wife to the airport in the morning, so I'll just stay up all night.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so good night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a great
Thank
week,
you very
folks.
much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.